right, we are live. Welcome back to all the people of the chat. Welcome to Reasoned Answers.
It's as good as waging war against Allah and His Messenger.
I had this stream scheduled for 8:45, and then I changed the time a few times, and it turns out I should have just left it at 8:45 because that's when we got started in the end. Thank you for your patience with all of my abrogations, but always remember that I don't cause a start time to be forgotten unless I bring one equal to or better than it. So this is as good as any other start time, I am sure. So today we're going to be looking at a video that YouTube has recommended to me. They know that I am a big fan of Dawa videos, so they recommend a number of amazing videos to me from time to time. In this case, the video is titled Proving Islam in 10 Minutes. I have not watched any of the video, so you'll be getting my off-the-cuff reaction to it. I have not pre-planned my thoughts. I have not taken the time to contemplate how I would be in rebellion to Allah or whatever. This will just be my actual thoughts. So if this guy makes a great argument, who knows? Perhaps I will say, well, maybe I've been wrong about Islam all along. Maybe there is actually some intellectual basis behind it and it's worth looking into. Yeah. Uh, who knows, right? Anything's possible, right? Anything is possible. So let's not prejudge this video. It does have, let me check real quick, does have 299,000 views, just a smidge under 300K. I'm sure it'll get to 300K any day now, perhaps even today. Perhaps my view will be the one that pushes it over. Who knows? Who knows? Houston wants to know, how has a 10-minute proof been able to hide for so long? And that's, of course, because Allah conceals what He wills to conceal and reveals what He wills to reveal. So the reason you have not seen this proof is that Allah has concealed it from you. Of course, He's still going to punish you, even though He is the one who led you astray. So just so you know, that is 100% proper theology with absolutely no holes in it whatsoever. All right. I guess we'll start with 5 gifted Reason Answers memberships from Jack Ray. There we go. I messed that one up. I thought I had fixed that. The one it had a typo in it. I thought I had fixed it. You'll get to see that video eventually. You'll get to see that dollar or that donation video eventually, but I will make a note of myself to figure out how I managed to screw it up a second time, because we triggered it once before. I realized it was screwed up. I thought I had fixed it, and well, I hadn't. So there you go. But thank you very much for those 5 gifted Reasoned Answers memberships, Jack. One other announcement. I know we're all in the mood for good arguments for Islam. This video is 10 minutes long, which means it'll probably take me like 3 hours to go through it, knowing the way I usually do these things. But if you only have 45 seconds to 1 minute to spare, go ahead and click on the pinned link for an even more powerful argument for Islam that is covered in just 45 seconds. I'm sure you'll be very dumbfounded about that. And I do give you permission to step away from this stream for just a second and check that out if you like. In case you haven't figured it out yet, I'm referring to my new channel there called Proof Texted for highlights from these streams. And you'll have to actually check it out to see what the argument is. The grifting video is probably a more effective Dawa argument than what we're about to hear. Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to improve upon silence when it comes to Islam. Like, your best strategy is just to not say anything at all.
And we're proud of that.
But nonetheless, they do feel the need to make dawah. So there we go. Let me share my screen. So we have Proving Islam in 10 Minutes by Farhan Ahmed Zia. Let's take a look at this description here. Islam is very simple. Fortunately, I believe people have been, and unfortunately, I believe people have been brainwashed by propaganda or have bad experience with religions that may have been taught to them when they were younger. Islam is free of all that. Islam is the truth of reality. We are created by something, the Creator. The Creator is not like us, and no creator resembles their creation. The Creator is not a dog or a cow or a man or a tree. Every child innately knows this until they are brainwashed by their parents. I remember contemplating a creator creating the universe at age 4 before I even knew what religion was. And then, no doubt, when he grew up, he realized that Islam is the religion that speaks to people with the intelligence of a 4-year-old, and he was blown away. It says, I tried to argue with the channel of the 10-minute video and ended up getting censored. Well, I mean, he has the ultimate proof of Islam. That's why he blocks anyone, apparently. I mean, I don't know. I have no experience with this guy, but at least in Sayed's experience, you get blocked for arguing against his video. Interesting. Text starts out poor. I guess it gets worse. Well, that's only a guess. We're going to see the reality here starting now.
Wow, it's quiet and empty, empty, empty. Wow, that's a Big Bang. How did I get here? Did the Big Bang create me? No, the Big Bang couldn't have created me. That's just a process we observe. Who or what made this?
All right, so right off the bat here, we see that this is going to be high, at least production effort. I mean, I don't know if a stick figure you can say high production value, but high effort video here, right? Not just some guy talking to a camera. And he started out with some reverb, which we all know is a good way to demonstrate you have the truth, because so many Islamic videos have like massive quantities of reverb in them to demonstrate they are true. So we're off to a great start here. A process, I think he said to observe, but process to observe, we observed either way. Yeah, that wasn't an argument. He's like, did the Big Bang create me? No, it's just a process. Okay. How is a hot dog made at a hot dog factory? Is it through a process? Yes. Does that mean that the machines at the factory don't produce the hot dog? No, they still produce it. So I'm not really sure how he thinks that is supposed to be an argument. That your t-shirt sign, what does it mean? So it's a combination of the ichthus, the Christian fish, and a crown of thorns. It's just a cool design. It doesn't have like any deep hidden meaning. It's just says I'm a Christian. That's all it says. All right, let's see.
Big Bang, bang! Who gave life to me? Was it my mum and dad? No, they just gave birth to me. They can't give life to me because if I die, they can't bring me back to life.
Okay, that's a terrible argument. I'm sorry, but that's a terrible argument. And I might accidentally have this at 1 1/4 speed. Let me check on that. Yeah, I do. So let's turn it to normal, because I thought he was talking a little fast. All right, we'll get back to normal there. But that's a terrible argument, that because my parents can't bring me back to life after they die means they couldn't have given me life. What kind of idiotic statement is that? Giving life and preventing death are not the same thing. There you go.
And what about their mom and dad, and their mom and dad, and their mom and dad? And what if we go all the way back? Then who gave us life, and who started all of this? Ever.
All right, so in case you haven't guessed here, he's going to start out, spending the first X minutes of the video just making an argument for theism. As I predict will usually be the case from these Dawa videos, I will certainly agree with the conclusion that there is a creator, that there is a God, that monotheism is true, but I suspect that they won't really be able to argue it in any coherent way, right? So he just said like, well, if my parents have parents, and they have parents, and they have parents, and they have parents, which is kind of alluding to an argument that you can't have an infinite regress, but not even stating the argument, let alone proving it.
Evolution. But evolution isn't conscious. That's also just a process. What if
Yeah, evolution isn't conscious, but where did you justify that there has to be a conscious to create? Oh, you didn't? Yeah, see, that's a shame of these things. Like, I wish that they would just, like, actually argue for the truth of Islam so that I didn't have to spend all this time pointing out from an atheist perspective, right? Because I'm not an atheist, but I mean, from an atheist perspective, these are terrible arguments. Oh, evolution doesn't have a conscience, therefore it could have created you. I mean, okay. And then I uses a process word again. It's a process. Okay. In the Bible or the Quran for that matter, God creates the world through a process, right? He doesn't just snap his fingers and everything instantaneously comes into existence. Could he have done it that way? Sure. But that's not the way it's described in the text. It's described as him creating one thing and then another thing and then another thing through a process, right? And how does God relate to man in either Islam or Christianity? Through a process. Oh, so you're saying that you're just saying a word for no reason whatsoever? Okay.
if we go back to the first cell? Who created that, or who gave rise to the first cell? Alright, well, let's think about this. Nothing existed, and then there was something. Well, nothing can't make something. If I do 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 forever, it'll always equal 0. It can never give me 1. Did we create our...
All right, so there he finally at least stated an argument. And I changed you to normal. Why didn't you stay? Oh, I see. It changed the custom to 1. All right, fine. He is actually just talking that fast, I guess. He wants to talk fast. Fine, he can talk fast. But anyway, so there he finally at least stated an argument that you can't get something from nothing. So kudos to him for at least stating an argument this time. Still didn't really argue for it, of course, but he stated a reasonable first principle that something can't come from nothing.
ourselves? But that would be like a mother giving birth to herself. That doesn't make any sense. It's impossible. Was it another
Wait. I think I don't want to speculate. What did he say?
Did we create ourselves? But that would be like a mother...
Did we create ourselves? Seriously, why do you feel the need to address that possibility? What person has ever said, oh, I created myself, that's how I got here? No one? So why did you feel the need to refute that particular so-called argument? Houston says put him at 0.75 speed, winky face. Now, in case you haven't noticed, YouTube just like a few days ago, at least for me, they changed it where you can now adjust it by 0.5, right? So I could put them at 0.95 or, 0.35 or whatever, which I thought was pretty cool because often I want 1.25 is all right, but I could go a little faster, but usually 1.5 is faster than I'd like. So I've taken to putting it like at 1.3 or 1.35 for a lot of videos. Just me personally. Just want to point out that new speed of YouTube, but I'll just play it at 1x so you get it in the intended speed.
Giving birth to herself. That doesn't make any sense. It's impossible. Was it another universe that made our universe? But wait a minute, this is just like the mom and dad thing again. Then if another
Oh, it's just like the mom or dad thing again, except you never argued anything with that. You just stated it. I mean, he could be drawing something, right? He could be making an actual argument that an infinite regress is impossible. But it has to be in time, right? And he's just kind of assuming that. The what makes it impossible is time, because then you'd never get to the present if there's an infinite regress, or more precisely, moving forward, you can't ever get any. Anyway, complex philosophical argument, right? But he's not making it. He's just saying your parents had parents. The universe, if it was created from another universe, that universe was also created from another universe. You haven't solved anything, which is true, but it's not actually a sound argument. Right? It alludes to a sound argument, but it's not actually a sound argument for by itself. So Professor Yuffle says, hello, what's happening? Well, it's 2 a.m. in the UK and you're having insomnia. That's what's happening. Yeah. So infinite regression, the concept can't be true. Yeah. So that's but to see, he's not stating that, right? So I wouldn't necessarily expect him to give a philosophical proof, but I would expect him to at least state the principle rather than just half drawing an analogy and not finishing it. That's my problem with it.
universe made that universe, and how did that universe make that universe, and what if we go on forever? We go back in circles. Something had to start everything.
Well, that's actually very interesting, right? And he says we go in circles, which he actually just inadvertently gave an escape while thinking that he was proving it was false. He actually just gave an escape. So if the universe were circular, if time were circular, then there wouldn't actually be a true beginning, and then you'd avoid the problem. So while attempting to say, see, I've proven myself, he accidentally gives an escape for someone who wants to deny this.
And it couldn't have gone on forever, otherwise nothing would have started. It must be something that was always there, that's eternal. The first.
Sure. I think he's gonna. I'm gonna grant that. Right? I'm not gonna like critique his philosophy here, because I agree with the principle, and I agree that you can get there. That there has to be something eternal. Now I have a suspicion that he's going to jump straight to it must be God, but that's where the problem's going to lie, because that's a separate argument. So you have an inductive argument from first principles to there must be something eternal, and then properly the way it would work is you have a deductive argument from observation of the universe to demonstrate what this thing or being is. That you can come to the conclusion from deduction that it is a personal being. I have a strong suspicion that he's just going to jump straight there. So, for example, just to make this clear, he says that something must have always been. But an atheist could just say, yeah, something always was, natural laws. And then you don't get God, right? We'll say though, he's doing okay, right? This is actually better than a typical Dawa video. So maybe he will actually justify it. Let's see.
Cause that caused everything to exist, the thing that created us. An initial energy or power. Okay, well, what should we call it? How about the creator? That makes.
All right. I'm not declaring that I'm starting a new religion or anything, but I did just prophesize that he would just jump straight to the creator, which the very phrase has already made it a personal being. So he's not going to justify the source of the universe being a personal being in any way. He's just going to say, why not call it the creator? There you go.
Makes sense since it created us. The Creator must be powerful if it created everything. It must have willed or caused everything to come into existence. It must be wise or knowledgeable to create everything.
Okay, so he didn't justify any of those things. So he says it must be powerful to create us. Why? How have you defined powerful? That it has to be powerful to create us. You haven't. Now I can justify these things, right? I can justify these things, but that's not. I'm not making his argument for him. I'm just pointing out that he is just stating it. Why does it have to have a will? All right. Why can't it be in uh, a natural law through chance creating? Right. Why does it have to have will? Certainly, why does it have to have intelligence? Right. Blind chance, and this would be the dominant atheist position, right? Is that there are an infinite number of different chance outcomes, and we live in the one chance outcome that would produce human beings, so we think it's extraordinary. He has not justified intelligence in any way whatsoever. And besides, how is he even going to how can he even determine what intelligence is without a reference, right? About human beings. So fail here, but I'm not surprised.
As we see it. Uniformity and regularity in nature, the stable laws of physics and gravity, the way everything is so finely tuned and precise. If the sun was a
all right, so I'll give him credit. He did allude to some arguments there. Like he said, everything's finely tuned. He didn't argue for it. He just stated it. But yeah, that is something that you can look at and reason towards God from. But he's not going to attempt to justify it, I'm sure, which is okay, I guess. He's only going to spend 10 minutes. I mean, he could have just started from the first principle that God exists. That's essentially what he's doing anyway, since he's not justifying any of his points.
A bit closer, we would all burn to death. And if it was a bit further away, we would all freeze to death.
Okay, so give him fine tuning.
So what is this Creator like?
Fair enough.
Well, the Creator must be distinct and different from us.
Okay, now here's where he's going to fail. And up to this point, I think he did a reasonable job, right? Could he have done better? Sure. Could he have been more justified his hypotheses or his conclusions or whatever in a more rigorous manner? Yes. Would an atheist be persuaded by anything he said? Absolutely not. However, for a minute 41 summary of an argument, not too bad. But here, he's going to start trying to justify Islamic theology, right? That's why he said the creator has to be different than anything in creation. And no, that's not true. That is in no way a reasonable conclusion. We'll see if he offers any if he offers any evidence for that. But I have a feeling he's just going to state it and then like say some stupid statement as to why it has to be like your mom is not like you or something along those lines. Well, one, that's not what Islamic theology. That's not what that's probably what the Quran means. Is that Allah is like us in some ways, but not in other ways. But in modern Islamic theology, the idea is supposed to be that Allah is so different than anything else that you can't even imagine him. And that isn't going to be in no way justified from the mere fact that there's a creator. But I digress. Let's see his argument before I critique it.
The Creator must be distinct and different from us. Everything we know about creators are different than their creation. If I make an iPhone, I'm nothing like an iPhone.
Okay. I said he was going to do some stupid analogy, and he did. I'm glad that he admitted that human beings can be creators.
Also, don't become an iPhone. In the same.
So he admitted that a human being can create an iPhone, and thus his argument's going to break down instantly, basically. Because you know what else a human being can create? They can create things that are a lot like human beings. They can create dolls that look like human beings. They can create textures that feel like human beings. They can create robots that can resemble a lot of aspects of human behavior. And I know he said that your parents aren't your creator, but in reality, human beings can create life through a biological process. And your parents are, in a very real sense, the creator of you. So he's just like said words and tried to define Islamic theology without justifying anything. Yeah, if you make a baby, is the baby human? Yeah, exactly. See, he got into big trouble by admitting that human beings can create. When he says, you created an iPhone, you're not an iPhone. The iPhone is not like you. And that's true. The iPhone isn't like you. But that doesn't mean that everything you create is distinct from you. You create a baby. You already admitted human beings can create, which you just said earlier they couldn't. And that's why your parents creating you doesn't count. Sad. It's interesting though, right? Because it was fairly reasonable until he tried to get to something that was specific Islamic theology, and then it just goes totally off the rails.
Same way, the creator would be nothing like us, and also it would be nothing like its creation. Well, are there two creators or three?
Yep, that's it. I called it stupid analogy, right? Stupid analogy. If you create an iPhone, you're not like an iPhone. Therefore, the creator of the universe has to be unlike the universe. Therefore, the creator of the human being has to be unlike the human being. Yeah, okay. As someone pointed out, maybe this guy wants to argue that human beings don't really create human beings when they have children. But you know what? As Houston points out, you absolutely can build a machine that can make more machines of the same type. Right? A robot that's programmed to make robots of the same kind it is can exactly self-replicate, so to speak. It can make a creation of the exact same kind. So his argument is stupid. He draws an analogy that doesn't work. Houston also said, if I create an iPhone and the iPhone dies, I can create another iPhone and resurrect it from a backup. It's true. You've given that. I mean, you wouldn't give the iPhone the biological definition of life, but in some sense, you have given it life, right? It has activity. It does stuff. And then it can die, right? We even use that phrase, dies. And then, as Houston says, you can resurrect it. So apparently, all he's proven is that there has to be some sort of creator that could be exactly like a human being. Yay! Good job proving Islam!
Like us, and also it would be nothing like its creation. Well, are there two creators or three creators? How do we know it's just one creator? Well, if there's two creators and then one wanted rain and one didn't want rain, it can't both rain and not rain at the same time. So it has to be
Newsflash, it can rain and not rain at the same time. Just because it's raining in Ohio doesn't mean it's raining in Florida. It can both rain and not rain at the same time. And this is very similar to the argument we saw last time, right? Where the guy was like, oh, if there's two creators and they have a different will, then only one of their wills could prevail, so there can't be two creators. And as I pointed out last time, there are many possibilities, right? There can be a lesser creator. Human beings are a lesser creator. So how is this demonstrating that there's only one creator? It doesn't. Now, of course, you could actually have law of excluded middle here if you said it can't both rain and not rain at the same geographic location at the same time, but that's not what he said because he doesn't know how to think clearly. And no one would suggest that having two creators means they both create the same object. No, it means one creates one object and another creates another. You have not ruled out a polytheistic system with multiple creators. All you've said is that only one God could create this particular cloud, or there could be no God creating it because it forms by natural processes. What's your point exactly? Or there could be two gods that are in agreement. Mm-hmm. So Nur says, this is the God of Christianity foretold in your Bible. In the beginning was confusion, and confusion was with confusion, and confusion was confusion. Wow, Nur, great argument. Where exactly did you find that in the Bible? Oh, right, you didn't. You just made that up out of your dumb, empty head. You have proved that you're a better creator. Even though this is one of the worst, stupidest thoughts I've ever heard in my life, you've proved you're a better creator than Allah, who created absolutely nothing because you at least created this idiotic, moronic contradiction. So, Nur, here's what you're going to do. You are going to pay attention. You're going to respond to the Islamic video that we're watching, or you are going to go to timeout.
And then one wanted rain and one didn't want rain. It can't both rain and not rain at the same time. So it has to be a single creator. All right. I believe a creator exists, but what's the point of religion?
Okay. I guess we got monotheism now. I guess that's what we supposedly got from what we've had so far. So we kind of got pretty close to having a halfway decent argument for theism of some sort. My apologies. I had to time out Nur there because I gave it specific instructions on what it was to do, and it refused to do it. Now, as I was saying, we have a halfway decent argument to some sort of theism, which could be deism, could be a personal creator God monotheism like Christianity, or sort of, kind of, but not really Islam. It could be polytheism. It could be pantheism. You haven't gotten remotely close to monotheism, but we're at monotheism now, apparently. So we should be getting somewhat close to Islam. Apparently now we have to justify why there be a religion in the first place, which I don't think you actually really need to justify. But nonetheless, right, it's his video. We'll let him spend time justifying something he doesn't really need to justify.
Why would I follow one? And why would a creator have made a religion?
Before I react, let's just play that again.
All right, I believe a creator exists, but what's the point of religion? Why would I follow one? And why would a creator have made a religion?
Okay, so first of all, there's a fundamental misunderstanding, right? Well, I mean, maybe not from an Islamic perspective, but from a logical standpoint. The creator doesn't need to create a religion. The way I would view Christianity, and I think the way that most people would view their religion, is something that is a true and accurate description of reality. The creator doesn't need to create a true and accurate picture of reality. Now, does he? It simply exists. What he really should say is, why do we need revelation from God, or something along those lines? But instead, it's, why would God create a religion? Which is thinking in terms of, like, why would God create rituals or something along those lines, which isn't what religion really is. Religion is really a set of beliefs about what reality is. AWLG said, in polytheism, only one of the gods causes rain. Each has God as their own domain, and people make religions. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, right, it wouldn't necessarily have to be that way. I generally, it generally, historically, it has been that way, that each God has a domain. But that's exactly my point, right? That he says, well, if there was two creators, one would want to create rain clouds, and the other would want to create non-rain clouds, and this is a contradiction. But as a WLG points out, well, the normal polytheistic or at least historically normal, is that one God is responsible for the clouds, and one God is responsible for the trees, and one is responsible for the waves, and one is responsible for earthquakes and whatever else, right? Anything that's important to human beings, there's a God behind. So he didn't get anywhere near monotheism, was the point. And people make religions, if you mean a set of practices, right? If you mean what he seems to mean as a set of rituals and practices and whatnot, then yeah, people create those. So there you go. So wait, if the weather is uniform globally in Quranic thinking, does that mean they deny the existence of the southern hemisphere? Well, I don't know. I don't know if there's enough in the Quran to really justify weather being uniform. It was just a really bad analogy of this particular guy, not really something particular to Islam.
Everything has a purpose. A water
Everything has a purpose. Does that sound like a good first principle to you guys? That everything must have a purpose. Would an atheist agree with that? No, I don't think so. And this is apparently how he's going to justify God creating a religion. Okay. Because a religion has purpose, I guess. Uh-huh. Recycling. There's a reason for everything. So apparently he's going to give the reasons for a water bottle. So, or I'm sorry, the purpose for a water bottle. The purpose of a water bottle is to be recyclable. Really? That's the purpose of a water bottle? Its purpose, if we want to say it that way, is to hold water, right? That's its purpose. Its purpose is not to be tasteless or to be reusable or to be recyclable. Portable kind of goes into its purpose. I mean, as Houston says, it's really more of a function, right? He's really more describing the function of a water bottle rather than a purpose. We generally think of purpose as something like deep and meaningful, reflective of ultimate reality, where he's just describing basic function of a water bottle. A water bottle can hold argument. These guys don't. A water bottle may hold water. This guy's arguments don't. I skipped the word there. Don't.
This is what we call clear hypocrisy.
His argument has no purpose.
bottle has a purpose, to hold water so people can drink it. Even the socks you wear.
Oh, he didn't actually read the other ones. The only purpose. The purpose
Everything
of
has a purpose. A water bottle has a purpose, to hold water so people can drink it.
But then he had all those other things on there, right? Because that wasn't apparently good enough. If he wants to say a purpose of a water bottle is to hold water so people can drink it, I'm going to grant him that. Like I said earlier, we kind of tend to think of purpose as more deep and meaningful, but I'll grant him that. A water bottle has a purpose. What's the purpose of a amoeba in this guy's view? I'd like to know. What's the purpose of a random carbon, or carbon was a bad example, a random helium molecule in space? What's the purpose of it? It's like he's going to the irony here is he's going to human inventions and saying these things that humans have invented have a purpose for humans. Well, duh, that's why we invented them. And so they would be useful, right? Or they have utility to humans, more precisely speaking. But I'm grading the informal use of purpose. But he's using things that we created in order to say they have a purpose to us. But what is the purpose of a random molecule, right? What is the purpose of a grain of sand on the beach? What is the purpose? heck, what is the purpose of a distant star? Let's say one that's too distant to be seen from planet Earth with the naked eye. What is the purpose of that? Right? I mean, this is just stupid to say everything has purpose. Now, you can argue the opposite, right? You can argue from a creator a personal creator who cares deeply about human beings and creates everything for the purpose of his creation story, which ultimately is about human beings, and conclude that everything has a purpose. But you cannot argue everything obviously has a purpose, therefore God exists, or therefore religion, because he's technically arguing for religion. He's already concluded God. He's arguing for religion now. Okay. What is the purpose of the rapid expansion of the universe? Oh, yeah, he understands religions are man-made. I mean, that's his analogy, right? Humans create things that are useful to humans. Therefore, God creates things that are useful to God, like religions.
Even the socks you're wearing have a purpose to keep you warm. This video has a purpose.
Wait. Purpose of socks
Video
is
has
to
a
keep your
purpose.
feet warm?
Everything has a purpose. A water bottle has a purpose, to hold water so people can drink it. Even
socks have a purpose. It's to keep your feet warm. Actually, I mean, he's thinking, of course, of, what he thinks of as a sock, which goes underneath a shoe. But of course, the original reason that human beings invented footwear was to protect their feet so that they could run longer distances over uneven ground and better kill predators, or better kill prey. So he doesn't even have the right purpose, really. Have socks were for shoes. I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say, but yeah, this might have been what you were trying to say, Snoopy, but Bruh's got it right? That the actual a shoe can keep your foot warm. The purpose of a sock is to prevent the shoe from rubbing on your feet, make a shoe more comfortable. And that's actually its original primary purpose. And your socks have no purpose for me. That's true. Yeah, so Snoopy confirmed that's what she's thinking. Yes, exactly. That's what the original purpose of socks was. I mean, trivial, right? Trivial, but he doesn't even have the right purpose of socks, really.
socks you're wearing have a purpose to keep you warm. This video has a purpose to convey the message of Islam.
This video has a purpose to spread Islam. I need my rewards from Allah.
Similarly, humans
I wonder what he thinks the purpose of brain rot videos are. Just a side note there.
must have a purpose. The creator would have created it for some intended purpose. No creator
Everything has a purpose, therefore I have a purpose. Okay. Still not getting religion.
creates something without any purpose at all.
No creator creates anything without any purpose whatsoever. So as we've already discussed, human beings are a lesser creation, right? I bet you everyone in this chat has created things with no purpose. Like you're in a boring meeting and you start scribbling on your paper. You technically created something, right? You created a drawing of some sort, but it had no purpose. It was just you idly sitting there doing something, and it had no purpose. So conclusion does not follow from premise. It does potentially follow from the nature of God that everything has a purpose, but it doesn't go the other way because it's not implicitly necessary that things have purpose. Seems like the purpose would be to distract you. I mean, maybe, but if you're just mindlessly doing it, you're not really distracting yourself.
Cannot believe that a pair of socks have more purpose than you. We also have intellect.
Why can't I believe that a pair of socks have more purpose than me?
No creator creates something without any purpose at all. You cannot believe that a pair of socks have more purpose than you.
Why can't I believe that? I mean, I don't, but why can't I? What? This is how you argue? You're not allowed to believe something. Therefore, I have proven my case. Okay. I mean, I absolutely could believe that socks have more purpose than me. I would say that an intellectually consistent atheist would believe exactly that, right? A sock is a creation of a human being with a specific purpose to serve a human being in some fashion. A human being is just a result of blind chance, according to the atheist, and it has no real purpose. So you failed. Failed. You must admit he's socking it to us right now.
We also have intellect. We are different from other beings because we can rationalize things and reason. We can also choose between what we think is right and wrong.
All right, so you got two things there. He's calling it one, I think, but you really got two things.
Have more purpose than you. We also have intellect. We are different from other beings because we can rationalize things and reason. We can also
So we're different from other beings because we can rationalize things and reason. Okay. There's some nuance here, but for the sake of the argument, I'll say I grant that. So what? What does that get you exactly? We're different. You know what? We're different than a chicken, sure, but you know what? That means a chicken's different than us. So what exactly did you conclude exactly? That different things are different? Different things are different, guys. I just want to give you this amazing knowledge here, right? We're practically becoming Muslims right now because we've just realized the profound truth that different things are different.
also choose between what we think is right and wrong. This creates
And so then he says we can also decide what's right and wrong. Okay. The mere fact that you said we can decide is exactly what an atheist would say. An atheist would say there is no real absolute right and wrong. You can decide what's right and wrong. But again, what is the point of saying we can decide right and wrong? You're just saying random attributes of humans? Okay.
also has innately disposed inside of us an inclination to recognize that something created us and that
I thought he was going to use those two things. I thought he was going to use intellect or reason and right and wrong in some way, but he didn't. He just went on to the next thing. He just randomly said those things and thought that he made a point. I'm not even sure what point he's trying to make, actually. Like, I literally don't know what his argument is supposed to be here. He just said human beings have intellect. Chickens don't. Human beings decide what's right and wrong. Creator has made us desire him. So why did you say those first 2 points? I have no idea. I really have no idea what like. I don't know why he said those things. So this one that he's starting on now, and we'll probably be on for about 5 seconds, given how he typically does things. He's actually got a point, right? This is one of the classical arguments for specific, for theism in general, but personal theism, right? With a personal God, that every human being, or nearly every human being, has this kind of innate desire for something higher. That doesn't prove that something higher exists, but it is more probable under the hypothesis that there's a creator than under the hypothesis that everything is chance. So it is a valid argument for theism. But those previous 2 points, he just seemed to set them for no reason whatsoever.
that some things are right and some things are wrong. We know killing innocent people is wrong.
Wait, okay. Sorry.
Inclination to recognize that something created us and that some things are right and some things are wrong. We know.
Okay. This is all they said is we have he didn't even try to make an argument from it. He just said we have an inclination that there's a creator. we do have that inclination. And he says we have an inclination that some things are right and wrong. That's true. But then he's going to say we all agree on certain moral principles, which isn't really true, actually. Right? He says that we all agree killing is wrong, but that's not really true, because most human beings will agree that killing is acceptable in some circumstances, even good, even the most moral thing you can do in some circumstances. We'll just disagree with what those circumstances are. For example, a Muslim following the Quran and teachings of Muhammad will believe that it's perfectly good. In fact, it's the best thing you can do is to slaughter unbelievers in the name of Allah. That's killing people. Do they agree that killing people is wrong? Well, kind of, right? They agree that killing Muslims who aren't hypocrites and aren't making mischief in the land and aren't silently rebelling against the law and you don't fear disobedience from and is wrong. But that doesn't mean that they agree killing that human beings have intrinsic value and killing any human being is wrong.
That something created us and that some things are right and some things are wrong. We know killing innocent people is wrong intuitively, but humans need guidance.
Again, we actually don't know that intuitively. I don't think that, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any hard evidence that human beings intuitively from birth know that killing is wrong. You need to understand the difference between the moral principles that you've inherited from your society, which has a certain worldview, and what's intrinsic to a human being. And I don't actually think he's right. I don't think that there's an intrinsic human principle that killing other human beings is wrong. Because if you look at world history, you'll see that excluding Christendom, sometimes, virtually every society in human history practiced the killing of other, right? Anyone who's not part of your group, tribe, society, however you want to put it, is evil, bad, undesirable, and should be killed in some fashion. And of course, it's encoded into Islam. So what in the world is he talking about that we all have this intrinsic? We all intrinsically know it's wrong to kill innocent human beings. But fortunately, Islam comes around and tells us that non-Muslims are not innocent. They are in open rebellion against the law, even if they'd never heard the message of Islam, and they deserve to be slaughtered. Because we need guidance. We need that guidance. We know intrinsically that it's wrong to kill other human beings, but we need the guidance from God to tell us when it's acceptable to kill other human beings. I mean, what the heck? This is the stupidest, most unjustified set of arguments that I can imagine. I guess that's what happens when you try to prove a giant point in 10 minutes. You spend 5 seconds stating something and don't have the slightest thought behind it, or at least don't demonstrate the slightest thought behind it.
Because this doesn't cover everything. Some societies have different customs with different laws. Some people think eating dogs is okay. You might think that's
yeah, different societies have different customs and value, including what they kill or what human beings they kill. You have not shown that there's an intrinsic human principle. All you've shown is we need guidance. Unless there is no moral principle, right? Unless there is no inherent moral principle, I obviously agree that there is actual right and there is actual wrong. But I don't think he is in any way remotely justified. He just said it. Some people eat dogs. Other people think eating dogs is disgusting. Therefore, we need Islam. Oh, people of the chat. Brilliant humor tonight. Loving it. Unfortunately, I can't read very much in the chat. I can't get very much of your amazing comments, but I know you guys usually bring it, right? Because I usually can read most of your comments while Mary's talking. But I can't really pay attention to the video and talk and read your comments all at the same time. Obama ate a dog, so I heard.
That's the last thing you would ever want to show anybody.
Clearly wrong, but without a creator's guidance to tell us exactly what's right and wrong, that's just your opinion. You think it's wrong.
Oh, okay. So you're arguing for atheism. You think you have moral principles, but they're really just your opinion. I'm arguing for Islam by proving atheism.
Wrong, but somebody else that might want to eat them thinks that you're wrong, and you think that they're wrong, and somebody else thinks that you're both wrong, and no one's wrong, and he's wrong, and what if everyone's wrong, and he's right, and he's wrong? Then no one is right or wrong. You might think,
Oh my goodness. You mean if it's all subjective, no one's actually right or wrong? Thanks for nothing. Like, what he's trying to do is show that this is stupid, right? That there is actually something that's right and wrong. But what he's actually, I mean, he's almost like word for word arguing the same way an atheist would argue. Is like, you think there's right and wrong, but did you know that other people think it's okay to eat dogs? Did you know that Hindus practice burning of widows when their husbands died? And they thought it was perfectly moral. You see, there aren't any real moral principles. There's just society-induced principles. Except he thinks that he's arguing for Islam, even though he's like almost word for word arguing the same way an atheist argues. He's like, see, I've established there aren't any really moral principles, which is why you need Islam to tell you what the real moral principles are. Okay. Really? How does that follow?
think walking around naked is wrong, but a tribe in Africa thinks you're wrong, and they think it's normal customs and there's nothing wrong with it. There has to be clear right and wrong things, like rape, murder, stealing. These can't just be opinions.
Why can't they just be opinions? Come on, man, this is easy. You're driving me crazy, buddy. You're arguing exactly like an atheist while thinking that you're proving your point, when you're like undermining your point again and again and again.
Must be innate truths. We need.
Okay. That. Let me just replay that sentence for you guys, because I don't want you to miss his great argument here.
Clear right and wrong things, like rape, murder, stealing. These can't just be opinions. They must be innate truths. We need religion.
And that's it. That's the end of this section, because he's going to start talking about a religion that does this. I just spent the last, minute and a half justifying that people have different perceptions of what's moral. But you know what? Some things must be wrong. They must be innate truths, innate truths, innate truths. I put a reverb on it so you know that I'm correct. What? He basically entirely argued against them being innate truths, and then he says there must be innate truths. This is like literally the dumbest argument. I gave him credit for the first minute and a half of the video, but this last minute is literally one of the dumbest arguments I have ever heard in my life. He spends all this time arguing that your perceptions of morality are just induced by society, and then he says, but some things are actually wrong, so there must be a religion that teaches you what's right and wrong. I've demonstrated that your moral standing or your moral understanding is not as sound as you thought it was. Therefore, Islam.
To tell us how to live and what's right and wrong. Otherwise, it's just opinions that don't matter. Okay.
Yeah. And then he just said it again, right? There must be a religion to tell us what's right or wrong. Otherwise, it's just an opinion that doesn't matter. Yeah, but who says it's not just an opinion that doesn't matter? Again, this is freaking driving me crazy, because he's like essentially arguing that his position is wrong, that theism is wrong, and then saying, but you know what? it must be true, therefore religion. I've given you a good reason to doubt what you always believed, but it must be true, therefore religion.
This is, again, circular reasoning.
This all makes sense. But what is Islam?
No, it doesn't make sense. Okay, sorry.
Islam means submission, and a Muslim is one who submits his will to the Creator. The Creator sent many.
Well, okay, fine. Yes, you're right. Islam means submission. You know what? You can submit to all kinds of things. You can submit to the true God. I will give you that. That's a possibility. You can submit to a false God. You can submit to culture. You can submit to your next door neighbor who's stronger than you. You can submit to your spouse. I mean, you can submit to all kinds of things. Yeah, you can submit. So what?
Many prophets: Moses, Jesus, Noah, peace. Islam means submission, and a Muslim is one who submits his will to the Creator. The Creator sent many prophets: Moses, Jesus, Noah, peace be upon them all, for a message to the people. The same message.
Okay. Where did he justify that? The Creator sent many messengers. Did I miss something? He literally just asserted the truth of Islam. Well, not, technically didn't assert the truth of Islam. Yeah, he technically just asserted that God sent many messengers and gave some of their names, but he didn't remotely try to justify that. God sent many messengers, such as Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. Therefore, Mormonism. Is that argument any different? No? Okay. You have Daniel on your channel as a guest. I'm such a massive fan of Daniel Hikachu. I do have several Daniel clips. This is one.
So this is, again, circular reasoning.
But this is my personal favorite, I think.
Huge tidal wave of hormones.
Sent many prophets: Moses, Jesus, Noah, peace be upon them all, for a message to the people. The same message, to worship.
The same message, okay? I mean, I know that's what Islam claims, but where did Adam, Enoch, Noah, Lot, Hud, Salah, Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Suab, Job, Moses, Aaron, Ezekiel, David, Solomon, Elisha, Elijah, Jonah, Zechariah, John the Baptist, or Jesus teach Islam? I'm waiting. Where did any of them teach Islam? Okay. Welcome, Mary. We are getting some miraculous proof of Islam here. So far, we've learned that there has to be a creator, that everything has purpose, therefore religion must exist, and that Islam means submission, therefore all the prophets taught the same message, or something like that. It's a little tough to follow his argument, if I'm being honest. But where did all these prophets teach anything remotely resembling what Muhammad taught? I don't recall they did. And as a Christian, I wouldn't really say they taught one message. I mean, they taught a coherent message, but they didn't really teach the exact same thing. What would be the purpose of that? Right? What would be the purpose of sending person after person saying the exact same thing? I don't see any purpose of that, right? The biblical understanding is that it's progressive revelation. God is revealing his story to human beings a little bit at a time. It all fits together as one cohesive whole. The Islamic perspective, I guess, is supposed to be God sent Adam and he said, blah, blah, blah. And then he sent Enoch, and he said the exact same thing. And then he sent Noah, and he said the exact same thing. You see, this is the proof of Islam, that God has to send continual messengers to say the exact same thing to every generation. Until you get to Muhammad, then for some reason, his message is for everyone. Makes total sense, I'm sure.
Worship the Creator alone without partners, but man is flawed, and people
Okay, so, yeah. That's the message that they all taught. Worship the Creator alone without partners. Yeah, and I'm sure you can find that in all the books of Adam and Enoch and Noah and Lot and Hud and all the rest, right? You can find that in their books. Oh wait, they don't have any books. Well, what about the books of, say, Moses or David or Jesus? Where do you find it in the books about them? Oh, you don't? Not in those words, certainly, because they didn't teach that message. I mean, it's compatible with what they taught, but that's not what they were teaching. Okay.
kings, ignorant, the evil, the greedy, the disobedient, the arrogant, intentionally, and
What?
people, kings, ignorant, the evil, the greedy upon them all, for a message to the people. The same message, to worship the
He's going to give a very important description of people who don't believe this message.
Creator alone without partners, but man is flawed, and people, kings, ignorant, the evil, the greedy, the disobedient, the arrogant, intentionally and accidentally distorted and kept changing the message they came with. So the
I just don't know what to say. So the kings, ignorant, greedy, blah, 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 they intentionally and unintentionally changed the message until other human beings who were also flawed and greedy and kings and so on and so forth never changed the message of Islam in any way whatsoever. Like, I mean, if his argument is that human beings are sinful, fallen, corrupt creatures, therefore they must corrupt their scripture over time, either purposely or accidentally, then Islam must be corrupt, right? That's the argument. Human beings inherently corrupt, therefore anything in the hands of human beings is corrupted, therefore Islam is corrupt. Okay. I also like how he's like, oh, I mean, it's not like 100%, but you know, like these early prophets, like say Abraham, they brought Judaism, or they're sorry, they didn't bring Judaism, they brought Islam, but then it got corrupted to Judaism. But then these middle prophets like Moses and Aaron, they brought Islam and it was corrupted to paganism, because that's what comes second. First Judaism, then paganism, and then lastly Christianity from, you know, obviously Jesus, right? Jesus and John the Baptist, they bring Islam for the 129th time, but this time it gets corrupted into Christianity. Okay.
Creator sent a final prophet, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to keep mankind back on the straight path.
Notice the argument here. Allah sent all these prophets, all to the Jewish people, by the way, and people just kept screwing it up and screwing it up and screwing it up and screwing it up. And of course, if we take the Hadith seriously, this happened 140,000 times, not just the 20 or 30 times that the Quran knows about. But then for some reason, Allah just could not figure it out. He couldn't figure it out. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to get people to never corrupt this message? I know. I'm going to send it again. But this time I'll send it through Muhammad. Because Muhammad is basically a deity. So once he says it, people will actually believe it. I mean, that is seriously the argument. Okay, so it's not the argument of the Quran. It's not the argument of Muhammad, but it is the argument that Muslims are forced into because they know that the Quran lies through its teeth when it says it confirms the Bible, or when it confirms the gospel and the Torah more specifically. They know it's incoherent. And so they lie and say, all the prophets were huge, pathetic failures. Allah was just so stupid for sending this same message to all these people who failed and failed and failed and failed some more. But then he finally found a human being that was worthy of worship, that was incapable of corruption, that was so good that no one would ever reject him. Muhammad. The argument itself, right? The argument they are forced to essentially already deifies Muhammad without any of the practices of Islam which deify Muhammad.
Path and be a guidance for the rest of time until the end of times. But what is the point of a prophet? Well, without
Where's the justification that Muhammad is such prophet? None. No justification whatsoever. He's already moved on. He said, finally he sent Muhammad, which brought an uncorrupted message. Couldn't fail. Why? No clue. Didn't even add one word to it. He just stated it. Now we're going to ask what a prophet is.
Without them, we don't know about the Creator and what is right and wrong. They are the examples and the role models for mankind to follow. Muhammad.
I'm going to play it again.
Without them, we don't know about the Creator.
I need to get back to the first sentence.
To keep mankind back on the straight path and be a guidance for the rest of time until the end of times. But what is the point of a prophet? Well, without them, we don't know about the Creator and what is right and wrong. They are the examples and the role models for mankind to follow.
That's interesting. And I just wanted to make sure I was right before I said it. So he writes on his slide, the purpose of a prophet is to receive revelation and guidance. Which is fine. I mean, it's not exactly how I define it, but it's fine. But actually, he doesn't say that in his speech, which means he thinks that's a secondary purpose, not that important. The main purpose of a prophet is to provide a role model for humanity, to tell us what's right and wrong. Okay. A prophet, if you look at any dictionary, a prophet is someone who claims to speak on behalf of God. So that means they're a role model, because we all should follow that example and speak on behalf of God. We should all claim to be speaking on behalf of God, one or more gods. I mean, I know why he's putting this here, right? Because Islamic theology makes Muhammad their deity that they're supposed to emulate. But this has nothing to do with the definition of a prophet. Like, literally has nothing to do with what's the definition of a prophet. And it's the primary thing that he cites as the purpose of a prophet. And he says this, the other thing he says is to tell us what's right and wrong. Interestingly, he puts it on his slide, right? Tell us about the Creator, receive revelation. But the things he emphasizes are about human beings. He doesn't emphasize the things that are about God. The actual purpose of a prophet is primarily about God, right? It's primarily about God, not primarily about human beings. But that's the difference between true religion and Islam. Islam is primarily about human beings. It's primarily about do these things, follow these rules. And if people won't follow those rules, then violently subjugate them, take all their money, and get rich. That's the purpose of Islam, because it's about human beings. But that's not the purpose of a prophet, of a true God, because a true God, a true religion, is about the deity. It's not about the human being. It's like defining a calculator without mentioning calculation. Pretty much. Child marriage is role model behavior now. I mean, obviously. Duh.
This is Islam.
About the Creator and what is right and wrong. They are the examples and the role models for mankind to follow. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, came with the Quran, a claim that it is...
Okay. Just going to take a break here, breathe, take that opportunity to turn on the cat cam because the cat has just arrived. Because all he's doing, like literally, this video is supposedly called 10 minutes proving Islam, right? Proving Islam in 10 minutes. It should be called 2 minutes giving a basic argument for God in 8 minutes, stating Islamic beliefs and saying they're true. Because he has not, as near as I can tell, even attempt to argue for the truth of any of his points. He's just stated them as fact and said this is what Islam teaches. This video should be called, "What Does Islam Teach?" in 10 minutes. Not proving Islam. A proof involves a premise, usually multiple premises, deduction from those premises, and a conclusion. That's a proof. Telling you what you believe, what Islam teaches, is not a proof of what Islam teaches. It's simply telling you what Islam teaches. Oh my goodness gracious.
This is the level of their arguments.
And it is very, very sad. I now almost feel embarrassed saying that the first 2 minutes of this video, or first minute and a half of this video, is not very bad, because the rest of it has been a total massive disaster. Not like there's a bad argument, there's a decent argument for something that's false, and then there's this guy who just says things and says, I have proven my point, or sometimes directly argues against his point and says, but my point must be true. What the heck is wrong with this guy?
Creator's speech. It is the Creator directly speaking to mankind. It is the mankind to follow. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, came with the Quran, a claim that it is the Creator's speech. It is the Creator directly speaking to mankind and to the reader. Well, how can we prove the Quran is from the Creator? Well,
okay, so I think this is a turning point in the video, right? So he, again, just stated Islamic belief, but he did ask, how can we prove this? Which is what he should have been asking in every step, instead of just stating it as a fact at every step. But this time, he's going to justify why the Quran is the speech of God, and then everything else will follow from that. Sure. Let's take a break before we get this amazing, powerful argument for Islam, or the Quran, I should say, with 5 gifted Reason Answers memberships from Jack Gray.
Wasting your time on social media is one of the best deeds a Muslim can do. There's a huge need for it. You know this and I know this. So that makes the reward even greater. So give generously and Allah Azza wa Jal will give you even more.
Thank you very much for that, Jack Ray. And remember, Allah will give you more. Bruh says he's picking and choosing what he's going to prove because the Quran tries to argue for its own divine origin. Yeah, but I mean, Islamic theology says the other things. So I don't think he's picking this one because the Quran argues for it. I think he's picking it because he actually can come up with something, whereas the other ones, he can't come up with anything whatsoever. So it's actually proving Islam in the last 5 minutes. We'll see. I mean, maybe. I'm hopeful this is a turning point. He's actually going to make some arguments now. We'll see. I mean, I could really use some bad arguments. A bad argument would be infinitely better argument than what he's given so far, which is no argument whatsoever. What's wrong with this guy? Did I probably said that right? What the heck is wrong with this guy? And Jack with a very powerful, very correct answer that Islam is what is wrong with this guy.
What a powerful answer.
we can study it. It was sent to the greatest poets in Arabia, and they could not match.
Okay, we can study it. Fine. Let's just get that. Let's see that statement again.
Reader. Well, how can we prove the Quran is from the Creator? Well, we can study it. It was sent to the greatest poets in Arabia, and they could not.
So we can study the Quran. Okay, I'll grant that. We can study the Quran.
Match it, and they accepted it could not have been from a human.
No, they didn't. It was sent to the greatest poets of Arabia. It was sent to Muhammad, first of all. So is Muhammad the greatest poet of Arabia because he wrote the Quran? Nitpicking his words. I think he meant it was sent at a time where there was great poets of Arabia. Fine. Nation of poets. So I'm going to have to go actually based on what he says here rather than what he says out loud. Poems were hung on doors. I have no idea if that's true. I've never heard that before. But let's say for the sake of argument it's true, even though I highly suspect it's false. So what? People hung poems on doors, therefore the Quran is great poetry. Nation of poets, that's certainly false. Now, there was a high practice of poetry because Muhammad himself in the cave story tells you exactly why, right? He says, either I must be a poet or I must be possessed, which is really just him saying one thing, because the reason there's a lot of people practicing poetry is because it's viewed as akin to speaking to a spirit. In other words, there was a lot of people practicing religion. Okay, yay. Outstanding literature, according to who? Not me. The Quran is pathetic and disgusting, and frankly, just quite boring. I would not call it outstanding literature. Could improvise poetic speeches. So maybe he's saying Arabia had outstanding literature at the time of Muhammad. If that's the case, then how come we don't know, like the average person, probably even the average person in the Arab world knows nothing about this time period. I'm not saying that there are zero knowledge of the poets of that time. There is some knowledge, but it's akin to the amount of knowledge that is just about any time and place. In fact, most human societies throughout history have practiced poetry. You know why? Well, one, the rhythm appeals to human beings, right? Reciting a story or reciting a set of words in a monotone voice with no inflection, no rhythm, no meter, no rhyme, nothing, just random words that convey information. You know what we call that? A robot. Do we find robotic speech attractive? No. So human beings have practiced poetry because it appeals to our mind. Additionally, having a form to something makes it a lot easier to memorize. And in a time where writing is very rare and expensive, memory is super important. So yes, human beings have practiced poetry throughout human history. Xena Warrior Princess had a rap battle one time. And indeed, isn't that arguably the height of poetry? Is modern rap? I mean, it's pretty tight, right? It's pretty good poetry. So there's nothing special about Arabia. Can improvise poetic speeches. Yeah, that's called freestyle rapping. Other people can do that. Consider non-Arabs dumb due to poor speech. Think about this point for a second. Let's say for the sake of argument it's true. I think there's probably zero evidence one way or another. But let's say for the sake of argument it's true. Arabs considered non-Arabs to be dumb because they had poor speech. Oh, kind of like how people who aren't from the southern United States consider people from the southern United States to be dumb because they have poor speech, or how upper class British people consider lower class British people to be dumb because they have poor speech, or people perceive the Australian accent as being dumb speech. You mean people usually don't like accents that aren't their own very much? Oh my goodness, this is the proof that this is the time and place that Allah had to send the Quran, is because people were discriminatory against people who weren't like them. And that never occurred anywhere else. Tribes would have poetry battles, more rap battles. all were collectively proud of their language. Okay, first of all, whenever you start a sentence with all, you know that that's not going to be true. But generally speaking, it was probably true that Arabs were proud of their language. You know what? It's generally true that Americans are proud of their language, and it's generally true that French are proud of their language, and it's generally true that Greek are proud of their language, and it's generally true that everyone is proud of their language. No one goes around and says, man, I have such disgusting language, I don't want to speak it. I mean, how stupid is this? And then finally reached what they considered peak eloquence. So this is the only actual argument, if you want to even call it that, is that supposedly contemporaries of Muhammad recognized that the Quran was exceptionally good poetry. One, it's plain false. The Islamic narratives record individuals who went around saying there's nothing special about Muhammad's poetry. I can create better poetry myself. And then Allah sends curses upon them, according to the narratives. Okay? Or Muhammad orders their slaughtering, or whatever, right? They get rid of them. So some people considered it to be somewhat decent speech, and other people thought it was really bad speech. But the ones who thought it was somewhat decent killed those who thought it was really bad speech. Therefore, it was great speech. Okay. That's problem number one. It's just flat out false. Problem number two, it in no way remotely implies it's divine. Right? Certain authors, certain musicians, certain painters, whatever, have been acknowledged in their own time as being the tippity top of their field, the greatest that ever lived. Does that mean that whatever they said was from God? Or whatever they painted was from God? Of course it doesn't. So what in the world is that supposed to be an argument for? I know why he's saying it, right? I get it. I know why he's saying it. And he's saying it because it's the idiotic argument the Quran makes of itself. But it's a terrible, 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 terrible argument. No one in the history of humanity other than Muhammad would make such a dumb argument. No one has gone around and said, I am the best painter, therefore my paintings come from God. I am the best baseball player, therefore my sports skills come from God. I am the best politician, therefore my politics come from God. No one has ever said that in the history of the world other than dumb Allah, aka Muhammad.
The greatest poets in Arabia, and they could not match it. And they accepted it could not have been from a human. They came up with all sorts of excuses. It was magic, sorcery, but they did not.
Oh, you know what some of those excuses were that he doesn't list on his slide? This is nothing but tales of the ancient. Okay, Mary corrected me. I guess it's not unique to Muhammad. Some other dumb pagans made the same argument that my speech is the best speech. Fine, whatever. Contradict me, Mary. But you know what the excuses that people came up with for why the Quran is not from God? That it's merely repeating tales of the ancient and we can do something far better? Oh, really? Huh. He doesn't have that excuse on his slide. I wonder why. He says sorcery or magic, soothsayer. But you know what? That's what Muhammad thought. If we take the narrative seriously, that's exactly what Muhammad thought. He's like, oh crap, all these poetic thoughts have come into my mind. I must have been possessed by a demon. It must be sorcery. It must be magic. It's just part of the culture that they think that poetry comes from demons or jinn. You know, jinn. But that's not like some proof that they're just coming up with excuses to deny things, especially when other people are going around saying this is utter crap. My dead dog could produce better poetry than Muhammad. Why are you people so stupid in following him? And then Muhammad's followers say, you will lose your head for this. And therefore, the Quran is proven to be the most eloquent speech.
Think a human could have possibly made it. It also has a challenge inside of it that no one can produce a verse like it. And it is a
Yeah, it's the stupidest challenge in the history of the world. Even Muslim scholars have no freaking clue what this verse is supposed to mean. Does it mean that there's something special about the literary style? Does it mean that it contains unsurpassed knowledge? Does it mean that it contains moral truths that are beyond question? Muslim scholars don't know what it means because it's such a good challenge. And guess what? Everything is unique in some fashion whatsoever. I'm just going to pick a random sentence from chat. Listening to the gentleman on the video, he appears to be full of exuberance of the eloquence of his own verbosity. I bet you this exact sentence has never been spoken by another individual in the history of the world. That John Wilson is utterly unique in this speech. No one else has ever uttered this exact sentence word for word in the history of humanity. That may seem counterintuitive, but in reality, if you search for a sentence that is more than a few words long, you will find the source of that sentence, unless, of course, it's a famous sentence and repeated all over the place, right? You'll find the source of that sentence. I can take one of my sentences from a video, search every transcript on YouTube of every video, and it will only come up with my video, because that's the nature of speech. So yeah, technically the Quran is completely unique, but so what? That doesn't mean anything. It means absolutely nothing. This is actually proof that the Quran is false, because it's an invalid argument. Just because something's unique doesn't mean it comes from God. But that's what the Quran argues. This is unique, therefore it must come from God.
linguistic masterpiece. This is attested to generally by all scholars, Muslims and non-Muslims.
What a lying sack of crap. What a lying sack of crap. I'm going to play that sentence again.
Produce a verse like it, and it is a linguistic masterpiece. This is attested to generally by all scholars, Muslims and non-Muslims.
All scholars. This lying sack of crap says all scholars, Muslim and non-Muslim, attest to the literary genius of the Quran. Unfreaking believable.
This is a lie.
You know they're telling a lie.
We are here to expose their lies to everybody.
There are numerous scholars who have studied the Quran in great detail and said not only is this not the greatest writing in the history of the world, not only is it exceptional, it's objectively terrible. It's horrible. We don't even know what the freaking words are supposed to mean because the grammar's incoherent, literally incoherent in places. And this is every scholar, Muslim or non-Muslim, saying that it's the greatest writing in the history of the world. Unfreaking believable, the gall of this guy to put such a blatant lie in his thing. And I don't know who this lady is, right? But presumably this is, I don't know why I'm doing this, considering how blatantly he's lying, but I'm going to assume that Angelica Newworth actually said nice things about the Quran. But guess what? That's just one random person's opinion. She studied in Islamic studies and classic philology of the universities of Berlin, Tehran, Göttingen, Jerusalem, and Munich. Okay? You know what? I'm not going to say that that's not her opinion, that the Quran is, a literary masterpiece or whatever she said exactly. Let's read. I test that no one has succeeded in meeting the challenge of the Quran, and I really think that the Quran has even brought Western researchers embarrassment. I'll assume that she actually said that. But so what? It's just one idiot's opinion. It's one subjective opinion. I guess even though he broke it up weird, I guess her quote actually continues. So it brought Western researchers embarrassment who weren't able to clarify how suddenly in an environment where there was not any appreciable written text there appeared the Quran with its richness of ideas and its magnificent words. What richness of ideas? The Quran is extremely, extremely repetitive, and there are barely any ideas in the text that are directly stolen from existing writings. How is that richness of ideas? You know what the ideas of the Quran are? Here's a bunch of people who Muhammad knows are supposed to be prophets. Let's vaguely tell some stories about them that I heard around a campfire and cast them in the image of Muhammad in the process. That's the richness of its ideas, is that every human being in this stupid book, with the exception of Jesus, is a totally flat, one-dimensional character that reads exactly like Muhammad. The only actual character in the Quran is Jesus. There is no other literary character of any value whatsoever in the Quran. And that is richness of ideas. Magnificent wordings, I already talked about how some sentences are literally incoherent. Now, as far as Western researchers not being able to clarify how suddenly there was a written text in an environment where there previously wasn't written text. One, there were written texts before the Quran. Two, every society is going to have a first written text, right? So what? Is Beowulf from God because it appeared in an environment where there was no other English literature? Okay. Great. There's always a first, right? I mean, Homer, right? The works of Homer are far outsurpass anything else in ancient Greek society, at least by reputation and their importance of contemporary and later society and whatnot. Does that mean they're from God?
Wow, it's quiet.
Thanks a lot, Kat. Kat restarted the video. And I didn't put the camera on, he just walked by. But yeah, how are there no written texts? There were written texts. And even if there were, so what? There's nothing special about the Quran. One. Two, every society has a first text. Three, almost every society has exceptional texts. How is that an embarrassment to Western scholars? It's an embarrassment to Western scholars that the Quran develops in an environment where there was massive oral composition of works and maybe not a huge amount of writing material. Maybe. It's only a maybe because I personally think there was a lot of writing, a lot of physical writing, and the Muslims later destroyed it all because it was pagan. It reminded them of a time of ignorance and whatnot. So they just destroyed it all. So it doesn't exist anymore, but it existed at the time of Muhammad. That's my personal opinion. All right. Angelica is a real person. I can't find her scientific stuff. It's probably behind a paywall. I mean, that's probably not her fault, in all fairness. That's just standard academic process in these days and age. I mean, I could, yeah, I could look up her influence and whatnot, but it's really unimportant. She could be the most, she's not, but she could be the most influential scholar in the world, and it still wouldn't mean that her opinion is somehow magically true. Yeah, that's a good point, Jack Ray. If anyone really said this, right, and they aren't a Muslim or they aren't an Eastern scholar, who would say Western researchers, right? That's like inherently undermining the group by like naming it. Oh, the stupid Western scholars. They're embarrassed by how great the Quran is. And she's supposedly a Western scholar. Okay.
Saying that the Quran is a literary marvel and in a league of its own. The book also has no contradictions.
False. It has contradictions, including the claim that any book without contradictions, or with not too much contradiction, is from God. The very claim the Quran makes is in fact a contradiction of the laws of logic, but it has other contradictions, like who was the first Muslim, how many days the earth was created in, and so on and so forth. It has the same, at minimum, right? At minimum, it has the same type of apparent contradiction as the Bible. And it's supposedly the literal speech of God, not two different human beings writing from two different perspectives, and thus creating an apparent contradiction. So they actually have no valid answer for these things.
And no mistakes. It has also been unchanged since it was revealed.
Bull crap. There is ample evidence that the Quran has changed. Now, you can argue that it wasn't changed very much, and I might be fine with that. But that's not the same thing as unchanged, nor is that an argument for its truth. There are literal ancient documents, such as tax records, census records, and so forth, that are literally unchanged. We have the original copy from 2,000 years ago in a museum. Does that mean it's from God? Of course not. So why in the world would that be an argument? It's not.
We have manuscripts to prove this, that not even a single letter is different.
Okay, one, manuscripts can't prove that. Not strictly speaking. They can't prove there's no change. All they can prove is the manuscripts are the same. But they can prove the opposite. They can prove that there's textual variants, and that's exactly what the manuscripts do. Okay.
Yet all of this somehow came from someone who was illiterate.
Oh, always with the illiterate. Always with the illiterate. As if illiterate means stupid. And yeah, Muhammad was probably literate. But let's say, for the sake of argument, he's illiterate. So freaking what? That has absolutely no bearing on his intelligence. For how much Muslims claim they love and respect Muhammad, they sure want to make him look stupid. Right? They sure want to undermine his intelligence constantly. Why would they do that? Right? If the Quran was actually some kind of real miraculous thing that was apparent to everyone, no one would need to go around saying, and Muhammad was illiterate. He was stupid. He was the dumbest piece of crap to ever walk the earth, and yet he produced this amazing work. No one goes around and says, Mozart has great music, but in fact, he was retarded. The music is great on the appearance. You don't need to undermine the figure in order to say that it's great. And yet Muslims constantly feel the need to undermine Muhammad in order to make the Quran look good. Strange.
Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, could not read or write. He never went to school, and he had no education.
And Mozart was deaf. I mean, people do occasionally say that, but he wasn't deaf when he was originally composing music, right? And he wasn't, and crucially, he wasn't born deaf, right? So he heard music before he composed music. Now, if he actually just composed music without ever hearing it, that would definitely be miraculous.
It is still unexplained to this day how he came with the Quran. We also have an oral tradition to prove that the Quran,
okay, wait.
peace and blessings be upon him, could not read or write. He never went to school, and he had no education. It is still unexplained to this day how he came with the Quran.
No, it's not. It's literally readily apparent exactly how he came with the Quran. And that's assuming he came with the Quran, because, numerous people say he didn't. That was invented by one or more later figures or earlier figures and compiled together and put in Muhammad's name. But regardless, of that, sorry, I forgot what I was saying.
Peace and blessings be upon him, could not read or write. He never went to school, and he had no education. It is still
It was never explained how he did this. There is a readily apparent explanation, and it fits exactly with the Islamic text and common sense. Here's the explanation. Muhammad was a trader by practice. He traveled around. During the nights when there was nothing else to do, people sat around telling stories. He heard a lot of stories. He remembered some of those stories. Some of them he remembered fairly decently. Others he remembered pretty crappily. Later on in life, later on in life, he, if we're being generous, thought he had an experience where he came to receive revelation and was actually recalling his own memories. If we're not being generous, he purposely passed off his own memories as revelation of God. Either way, it's a very obvious explanation that fits perfectly with the evidence. The stories in the Quran look exactly like stories that were passed down orally and then revealed by God. They were revealed by someone who heard them orally, remembered them to varying degrees, and then passed them off as revelation. And even if he's illiterate, someone else can write it down. Being illiterate means absolutely nothing to this equation.
Explain to this day how he came with the Quran. We also have an oral tradition to prove that the Quran is preserved by a chain of narration that goes.
We already said that preservation is utterly meaningless. It can be perfectly preserved right down to the letter and be utterly meaningless. But no, we got to get oral tradition in here too, because the manuscripts, even though the manuscripts prove this, they don't prove it. Therefore, we have oral tradition, which means absolutely nothing because anyone can make up a chain of narration at any time. I have received a hadith from Muhammad. It was passed on from Muhammad to Bohammad, and then to Kohammad, and then to
Goes all the
Tohammad,
way back to the Prophet,
and so on and so forth, all the way to the present age. No one has heard this before, but I have the chain of narration to back it up. Here is the revelation that Muhammad delivered. He said, "You people are really stupid. I am the most obvious false prophet in history. Why in the world can't you see this? Oh, well, thanks for the money. Can you prove me wrong? It's got a chain of narration. Huh? And yeah, I just made up names, but I could just go copy the names from any hadith that you grade as Sahih. Look, all these names, they prove that this is a legitimate revelation of Muhammad."
The Quran is preserved by a chain of narration that goes all the way back to the Prophet, the source. Basically, millions of people have this book memorized by.
Muhammad, sir, could not have been a liar because he could not read. Illiterate people cannot lie. This is the proof. This is the proof, you see. Back to the video. Billions of people have memorized the Quran. Why in the world do Muslims say this? Like, usually they at least say millions, but this time this guy says billions. Billions of people have memorized the Quran. Has this guy memorized the Quran? Well, I bet you he's memorized a couple sentences from the Quran. But has he memorized the whole Quran? Of course not. So why is he claiming that billions of Muslims have memorized the Quran? Unless he means 0.00000000001 billions of Muslims have memorized the Quran. Then it might be true.
Heart and they can recite it. If I read it perfectly and my teacher gives me the seal of approval and he got the seal of approval from his teacher that he did it perfectly and his teacher from.
Look at this illustration here. This is great. Look, it's going back and back and back and it's getting smaller and smaller. I know that's not his purpose. Right? He's saying that's exactly the same. But look, it's getting smaller and smaller. There's less and less of the original as you go back further. Or if they say this is the oldest and this is the newest, then the story's expanded with each generation. And either can happen, right? Either the story can be contracted or it can be expanded from generation to generation or from telling to telling. His illustration accidentally shows what a stupid principle this is. At most, right? At most, the teacher will be available to correct the student. This guy, if we're assuming this is like 4 generations ago, he is not available to correct this guy if he misremembers something. So his existence is totally irrelevant to this guy's accuracy. 299,000 views for that crap. Yeah, but I've added one more. And I wouldn't be surprised if a fair number of people who watch this were watching it to laugh at. I mean, this is YouTube after all.
From his teacher and his teacher from his teacher and his teacher, you go all the way back to the prophet, the source, with no discrepancies.
No discrepancies! The prophet's not even showed. We don't know what his picture looked like. But then this guy, yeah, this one's a little different. Bigger and also slightly different, right? Bigger and also slightly different, bigger and also slightly different. No discrepancies whatsoever. All these stick figures are exactly identical in every possible way, just like the Quran is identical to what Muhammad revealed in every possible way. Thank you very much for this illustration, Mr. Farhan. You have proven accidentally how stupid your argument is.
We can confirm the Quran is preserved. This is a unique claim that Islam has that no other. All the way back to the prophet, the source, with no discrepancies, we can confirm the Quran is preserved. This is a unique claim that Islam has that no other religion does. As
no other now maybe I will grant him that maybe no other religion is stupid enough to make this claim, but other religions absolutely could make this claim. Our favorite comparison to Islam, 100% can make this claim. The Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants and the Book of Abraham are perfectly preserved from the time of Prophet Joseph Smith. We know this because we have Joseph Smith's original copy. Alhamdulillah. This is the proof of Mormonism. Not to mention religions invented in the last 20 years, right? There's probably hundreds of religions invented in the last 20 years, maybe thousands of religions invented in the last 20 years. And every single one has perfect preservation of their original scriptures. So what? So what? Alhamdulillah, Joseph.
no other religion can prove their claims go all the way back to their source.
No other religion can prove that their claims go back to the source. Well, first of all, Islam can't prove that, not objectively. All they can say is we have his chain. But I just pointed out that religions can prove that. They can 100% absolutely prove that it goes back to the source because we have the source. We have the source of Joseph Smith, right? We have the source of the Moonies. We have the source of every cult leader of the last 100 years. Does that mean that Islam is somehow proven because it can go back to the source when we know these other things actually can't go back to the source? Of course not. If the source is crap, it doesn't matter how perfectly preserved it is. And Muhammad is crap. He is crappity, crap, 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 crap. That is who Muhammad is.
Is this really the description of a true prophet of God?
Obviously, all prophets are true crap. Our Ron Hubbard is a true prophet. Maybe we commoners don't have his writings, but certainly the upper echelon of the Scientology sect has his true writings. Therefore, he is a true prophet because it has been perfectly preserved for the last 50 years, right down to the letter. We have the original source. Oh, and by the way, if it's a recently enough created religion, not only do we have the original written source, we have the actual source, the person still alive, to confirm that's what they wrote. This is the proof of a true religion. I think that what we're learning is that the actual proof of a true religion is that you can come up with the dumbest argument ever known to humanity, put it in the words of God, and then people will repeat it ad nauseum for 1400 years. That is the best argument anyone could ever make for Islam, is that This book is an utter piece of garbage, and yet it has been perfectly, let's make it a real argument, has been accurately, the main ideas of this text have been accurately conveyed for 1400 years, despite the main ideas being totally incoherent, idiotic, and contrary to human experience. Therefore, it must come from a divine source, because nothing else could keep this in human conscious so long. Imagine people started writing hadith about Joseph Smith now. That's how far removed the hadith are from Muhammad. More or less accurate. The irony, though, of this statement is that you actually could write some fairly accurate stuff about Joseph Smith, because we have other sources, right, you could draw upon, right? We have contemporary sources you could draw upon. So that's kind of the funny here. Charles Manson was the second coming of Muhammad. You know who, I'll save it for a different time when it's more appropriate to the conversation.
The Quran also had things in there that were not known to anybody at the time.
It had things not known to anyone at the time. We got scientific miracles. Scientific miracles, everyone.
The scientific argument, the scientific miracles in the Quran, is debunked.
No, it's not. Farhan says it's not. Farhan says there is knowledge of the universe, knowledge of the future, knowledge of the unseen, specific prophecies, and historical miracles. Obviously, knowledge of the universe would be the scientific miracles. It's not debunked. Ali, you're wrong.
Let alone an illiterate man in the deserts of Arabia.
Again, with the illiterate man of the deserts of Arabia. Why do they always throw in deserts of Arabia too? Like, oh, if he was illiterate but he lived in Rome, then he could have done this. But he was illiterate and he lived in the desert. Therefore, he could have done it. But guess what? If it was actually historical miracles, whatever that means, because that's a contradiction in terms. But if it was actually knowledge of the future or specific prophecies, which are the same thing, by the way, or hidden knowledge of the universe, then it wouldn't matter if he was the most intelligent, most well-learned person in the entire world of his time. It would still be miraculous that he would come up with that information. The fact that they have to argue that it, you might get away with saying this was a human being if it came from a well-educated individual living in the height of society of the time, but it didn't. It came from a dumb, ignorant piece of crap who lived in the desert. Therefore, it's a miracle. The fact that you have to diminish Muhammad, your supposed perfect example for everyone to follow, the supposed height of humanity, just to try to make something look miraculous, shows it's not remotely miraculous.
We can't consider this psychologically problematic.
Yeah, we can.
Almost 1,500 years ago in the 7th century. For example, the Big Bang was discovered in the 19th century.
Yes, the Big Bang was discovered in the 19th century, but it's not found in the Quran.
It was discovered that the universe was once a tiny, dense mass that exploded. Yet the Quran, over 1,000 years before this, said, Yeah, the heavens and the earth were once one mass. Hey, guys, does the Big Bang mean that according to the standard consensus model of science that we call the Big Bang for shorthand, did the universe start as space, stars, earth, all combined together, and then an explosion happened, and then the earth floated from that initial point off until it joined up with the sun and into a solar system? No? Oh. So they weren't one mass. If the heavens and the earth were one mass, according to his understanding here, that this is teaching the Big Bang,
then everything in the universe would be of the same age. Specifically, the Earth and the universe would be of the same age. The universe is roughly 3 times as old as Earth. There was never, in any way, according to consensus science, a time where the heavens and the earth were one mass. You know what really happened according to consensus scientific knowledge? The explosion, which isn't really explosion, but lack of a better term, fine. Explosion happened. Everything was super hot, super hot. There was nothing but plasma. Within fractions of seconds, things began to cool. Stars, well, no, sorry. First molecules, right? Individual isolated molecules are forming. Over time, conglomerations of mass get so massive that they form a sun. Planets form through a different process, basically a collection of space dust, right? In a less dense format, so it doesn't turn into a superheated object. I mean, this has absolutely nothing to do with the Quran's claim. You know what the Quran's actually claiming? The Quran is actually claiming that there are 2 physical objects. One is what we would now call outer space, but they calls the heavens. I'm going to it's fine. I don't care. It can call it the heavens. That's fine. I'm not objecting to that. But just for purposes of description, what we call outer space now, and the earth. And they're joined together. There's no way to get in between them. You could walk from the heavens, which is a solid physical object, to the earth, which is also a solid physical object. And then Allah splits them apart. And because he splits them apart, the matter that's outside, the stuff that's outside of these 2 physical objects comes in, which is water, because outer space is water, apparently. And thus it comes in to the gap created by the splitting of those 2 objects. That's what the Quran actually teaches. Is that the Big Bang? Of course not. That's a singular separation of 2 objects. That's not all mass was condensed to an infinitely dense, infinitely fine single point, and then a natural process happened which caused the creation of time and space and matter all simultaneously. And then over a period of time, different objects formed in different places through different processes. That's not what the Quran's arguing. Remotely. Not the same thing at all. This is all the scientific miracles are dumb, but I put this in the bottom 10% of how stupid it is, because no one in the history of the world would read that sentence and think that it was describing anything remotely like the Big Bang. Until some dumb Muslim came up with this, probably 50 years after the Big Bang was proposed, and said, "See, we found science in the Quran." Andrew says it's the pagan legend of the sky being lifted from the earth. The local pagans already knew this legend. I don't doubt that it was a pre-existing legend. My point is that, it's the pulling away of these 2 physical objects from one another and creating air in between them, right? That the air is what's actually created. Earth already exists. Space, which is viewed as a solid object, already exists. What's created in between them is the air.
The universe expanding also was not discovered until the 19th century.
And as someone pointed out, I said, yeah, that's correct when he said 19th century, which actually is not correct, as someone pointed out. I wasn't thinking that carefully about it. Yeah, 19th century, that's the 1800s. Right? I did actually know that, right? 1929, that's correct. That it was the 20th century. I just wasn't thinking about it carefully, but it's on his slide. This is a pre-prepared video. He's not thinking this off the cuff. I think he actually probably doesn't understand that the 1900s are the 20th century. I think he probably actually doesn't understand that. Anyway, discovered in 1929, which is the 19th century. Okay. Noted.
That theorize the universe is a finite mass that is expanding. Yet the Quran says over 1,000 years before this.
All right, so we're now going to go to the expanding verse, which I don't rate in the bottom 10%. The Big Bang's in the bottom 10%. Expanding, at least, is somewhat sort of remotely there. It's not, but I'll let him play the verse.
People used to believe.
Let me go back. We built the universe with great might, and we are certainly expanding it. All right, so here's problem number one. And that's why I said it's only sort of there. What's translated as expanding it is actually a noun. It's not a verb. So at best, we are certainly... So it's in brackets because it has to be implied, but we'll give the implied it. We're certainly its expander would be the best translation if it actually meant expanding, but it doesn't really, right? It's more like forming, perhaps stretching. Stretching might be okay, but stretching isn't really expanding. Like expanding is like actually making it larger, making there to be greater quantity of something, whereas stretching is just pulling it further apart. So they're actually two different things, but kind of sort of halfway there. Now here's the real problem, right? So I'm willing to kind of halfway sort of give them that's what the verse says. Here's the real problem though. This simply reflects the dominant myth of the time that the universe is a living creature, essentially, or at least by analogy is a living creature, born of an egg. Creatures, whether human beings, animals, plants, whatever, they expand, they get bigger, they grow. So yeah, maybe Muhammad thought the universe expanded, got bigger, grew because it was at least quasi-sentient being. So what? That's not some kind of miraculous knowledge. That's just the common myth of his own time. But now this idiot's going to say in the 16th century and in the 18th century, people didn't believe that. But that's irrelevant to Muhammad's time.
People used to believe the Earth was stationary and the sun orbited the Earth. It was not until 15...
Actually, he didn't even say that. I only saw the 1800s. I assumed that he was going to say that people used to believe that believe in a steady state universe where it maintained the same size over and over again. Or, not over and over again. That was a poor phrasing. But it was always the same size. But actually, he didn't even argue that. He just went to something different and said, people used to believe that the sun rotated the earth. Yeah. You know who else believed that? The author of the Quran. He believed that the sun and moon both rotated the earth. But, it's miraculous knowledge that the Quran says the sun has an orbit, because the sun technically has an orbit. But the readily apparent meaning of the phrasing in the Quran, especially since the moon's mentioned in the same context, is that the moon has an orbit around the earth and the sun has an orbit around the earth.
People used to believe the Earth was stationary and the sun orbited the Earth. It was not until 1543 when Copernicus discovered that the Earth also has an orbit and is not stationary.
Does this guy not understand how centuries work? And Andrew Martin's right. I was being generous. It's not actually an orbit. It's actually swimming. The sun is swimming around the earth because outer space, what we call outer space, is thought to be filled with water. So the sun is swimming, not orbiting. But as I was saying, this guy does not understand how centuries work. So first he says that 1929 is the 19th century. Now he says that 1545 is the 1600s. 1545 is the 1600s. He's using metric centuries. I guess.
And once again, the Quran, almost 1,000 years before this, correctly says,
وهو الذي خلق الليل والنهار
Hey, look! Although his other translation was not so literal, this one is, right? And the day, and the sun, and the moon, all heavenly bodies, not a justified addition, in an orbit, are swimming. Swimming! Look. The day, which is just the interaction of the sun and the moon, the sun and the moon are in an orbit swimming. Where's the earth? The earth isn't in this sentence. How is this different than the wrong view it's supposedly correcting about the earth being stationary and the sun and the moon revolving around it? What? What? The Quran. Let's just play it again.
it was not until 15 this. People used to believe the earth was stationary and the sun orbited the earth. It was not until 1543 when Copernicus discovered that the earth also has an orbit and is not stationary. And
1543, Copernicus discovered, technically argued based on math, but whatever, discovered that the earth orbits the sun. The thing that supposedly is in the Quran is the earth orbiting the sun. That's the miraculous knowledge that the Quran supposedly contains.
And once again, the Quran, almost 1,000 years before this.
1,000 years previously, the Quran says the earth orbits the sun.
Correctly says,
وهو الذي خلق
Where is the earth in this verse? It is not there. The day, the sun, and the moon are swimming. The day is just the interaction of the sun and the moon. That is not the earth. The day does not mean the earth.
الليل
What? What? What is this illustration? Like you had the sun and you had the planets orbiting the sun, and then you get this. What the heck is this?
والشمس
What the heck
والقمر
is this?
كل في فلك يسبحون.
it is also known by some.
Why did they put that there? I guess that was supposed to illustrate that the sun moves. I guess that's why they did that. But it just looked like weird nonsense. I mean, I'm not an astronomer, but I'm pretty sure no astronomer would say that's a very good illustration of the movement of the sun with the planetary bodies. Yeah, I think that's what it's trying to show, that that's the sun moving and then the planets are kind of chasing it, so to speak. But it looked horrible to me. Again, I'm not an astronomer. But to me, it looked horrible. Regardless, the earth was not in that verse. He said what was in the Quran 1,000 years ago was that the earth rotates the sun, and there was no such thing. He didn't say it miraculously knew that the sun has an orbit.
scientists that iron comes from space with the explosion of a star. Then iron fragments are blasted into space, and that is how iron came to Earth millions of years ago. The Quran also indicates this when the Creator, Allah, says space, and that is it is also known by scientists that iron comes from space with the explosion of a star. Then iron fragments are blasted into space, and that is how iron came to Earth millions of years ago. The Quran.
You know what else is blasted from space? According to science, right? Blasted from space, what an idiotic term. But you know what else comes from supernovas blasting from space? Every single atomic element from lithium all the way up to whatever the last element is these days, number 120 or whatever. Every single element heavier than hydrogen and helium comes from supernovas. Yet it's miraculous. It's miraculous that it's iron.
Quran also indicates this when the Creator, Allah, says,
Well, I have more to say about the verse. But AWLG also points out that iron meteorites didn't just fall millions of years ago. They also came much more recently. But you know that meteorites are a very insignificant source of iron. Not to the ancient world, because they didn't know how to mine. But as far as the total amounts of iron on Earth, very, very little of it comes from outer space in that sense.
as the Creator, He says, we sent down iron.
We sent down iron. Yeah, you know who else thought that God sent down iron? Ancient Phoenicians, ancient Egyptians, I believe ancient people of India. It was a common belief. You know why it was a common belief? Because you literally see a meteor, which you would think is a star, coming down to Earth. You go and investigate it, and you find a rock that contains iron. You say, this came from God. And it's the only kind of iron that is malleable, that's usable in the ancient world before they invent smelting, as Andrew points out. And thus, it's highly prized. Lots of people knew this, not just the Quran. But here's the thing, that's not what the Quran is saying at all. It's not saying we sent down iron literally from space. Because it says this about everything. We sent down clothing. We sent down the prophets. Did Muhammad descend from outer space? Apparently, according to anyone who makes this argument. We sent down freaking cows. Cows come from outer space, according to this argument, as well as other things which you could sort of say come from outer space, like, say, rain, for example. Okay. Yeah, provisions. Like, there's some things that you could reasonably work in, like rain or provisions, because that's general. But then there's things like cows and the prophets. Muhammad apparently descends from outer space. And you know what the verse actually implies? I think they put the words on the screen, yeah. We sent down iron with its great inherent strengths and its many benefits for mankind. The context is the making of war. Because iron, at the time, is basically the strongest thing that is available to human beings. So it's very useful for making weapons. Hence why we have the term the Iron Age. Until people learned how to make stronger weapons. We have the Iron Age. Or tools, not just weapons, but tools in general. But in the context of the Quran, weapons. Because the inherent purpose of everything is to wage war for Allah. And this is so. And if you look at the commentaries They generally think that this means that Allah personally allowed Adam to take physical iron tools or weapons from heaven down to earth.
نافع للناس.
As the creator here says, we sent down iron, indicating that it was sent from space, or sent from somewhere not occurring naturally in earth. The creator also says messengers were sent with the scripture so people may maintain their affairs.
He's actually going on to a different point, right? Because he didn't say sent down. But look at the verse he put on the screen. We have already sent our messengers with clear evidence and sent down with them scripture. We sent down scripture. Scripture, Allah, we comes from we, Allah. This means that according to the theory that there's some miraculous proof of iron here, and look, it's even the same surah, it's Surah Iron, that the Quran, and I guess still technically the Quran, but the version 1 of the Quran sent to Moses or whatever, or version 200, because it's not the first time, but that it comes on a meteor to descend to earth. That's how the scriptures were delivered. Because we sent down, like, it's literally same sentence. All right, we have sent down messengers, we've sent down scripture, we have sent down iron. So here's the one I was thinking of, wherein is great military might and benefits for the people, and so Allah may make evident those who support him and his messengers indeed. It's not that hard to see why the commentaries think that this is about giving iron tools and weapons to the prophets to make war. Yeah, the actual book would have had to come from space under this theory, right? And the messenger. Muhammad was not born, people. He descended on a meteor. Same with Adam. Same with Abraham. Same with Moses. Same with Lot, the prophet, and everyone else who are all Jewish. They all came down on meteors. But Muhammad's special because he came down on an Arab meteor instead of a Jewish meteor.
Injustice. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, also told us about moral lessons. He spoke about spreading peace to your neighbors, giving charity, feeding the poor, taking care of the elderly and the young, stopping oppression, being compassionate, doing things with excellence.
Yeah, sure, fine. Let's say Muhammad said all those things. So what? A lot of people say all those things. A lot of people say give charity, feed the poor, take care of the elderly, stop oppression, be compassionate, do things with excellence. A lot of freaking people say that, including cult leaders, right? Including people who claim to be prophets, in other words. How is this evidence of anything? It's not. My brain hurts.
Excellence, not harming anybody, and struggling against our desires.
Okay, there's two more. Not harming anyone and struggling against our desires. But same I am, right? Many people have made these kinds of claims. So what? Are they all prophets? Apparently.
These people have not enough substance.
He also combated racism, saying there is no difference from
Muhammad combated racism. All right, everyone. So Martin Luther King Jr. was a Christian preacher. Certainly said all these things. Right? He certainly said everything on this. He's a Christian preacher, right? He certainly says all these things. And he certainly fought racism. Martin Luther King Jr. is a prophet 1,000,000 times better than Muhammad. Because he didn't just say these things. He, for the most part, practiced them. He was a flawed human being. He had faults just like any other. I'm not like trying to elevate him to the superhuman status. Point being, he was infinitely better than Muhammad, right? Number two, What do you mean he fought racism? Technically, racism doesn't exist because the concept of race doesn't exist. Okay, fine. What you mean is he fought bigotry. Did he, though? Did he really fight bigotry? Or did he say one nice thing one time and not in Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim, right? Where's this hadith from? It's from Musa and Ahmed. At least they gave the correct source. Usually they try to claim it's from the last sermon, which is not. But they gave the correct source. It's from Musa and Ahmed, which is not one of the 7 canonical sources. It is probably the 8th most important hadith collection. And no, it's not a fake hadith. It is in Musa and Ahmed. It's fake as part of the last sermon, but it's not fake in and of itself. However, when did Muhammad say this? Right? When did he say this? Maybe he said this in his very early days before he had any following, and it was abrogated later on. They wanted it to be in the last sermon because they wanted it to be his final marching orders. Why do they want it to be his final marching orders? Because time after time, with the one exception of this quote, I mean, he may not have really said it, right? When I said it's not fake, I mean by Islamic standards. Whether he actually said it or not, I have no idea. But by Islamic standards, it's at least sound, if not sahih. So, Hassan. But it's at least Hassan. It might be sahih by Muslim standards of hadith king grading. Whether he actually said it, I have no idea. But let's assume he said it. We don't know when he said it. It could have been what he said early on, and then he changed his mind. Or he was just having a good day that day and said something nice. I mean, it's just a human being. He can say contradictory things. If you look at the vast body of evidence of his thoughts throughout his career, it's about Arab superiority. Arabs are better than every other people. Muhammad's own tribe is better than other Arab tribes. Muhammad's family is better than other families in his own tribe. And of course, Muhammad is the best of his own family. And there's a couple more layers in between there, but you get the gist, right? That it goes down from all people to Arabs, ultimately to Muhammad. The fundamental belief of most of his teachings is that Arabs are in some way superior to others. Yes, he also says stuff like the only reason that one might be superior to another is in piety and good deeds. But actually, this doesn't tell you that there's no difference between, like, it doesn't stop here. There's no difference between an Arab or non-Arab, period. End of statement. No, there's except in piety and good deeds. Maybe Arabs are superior because Arabs have more piety by nature. That's completely compatible with his statement and the rest of his body of work. So this doesn't like somehow give you a magic bullet that gets rid of any sort of bigotry. Muhammad made very discriminatory statements against people who look different than him throughout the hadith collections. Of course, people's favorite example is when he says you should follow your leader, even if he is a deformed Ethiopian with a head that looks like a raisin. Technically, what he's telling you is you should follow your leader no matter what. But this only works as an example. So he's not technically saying Ethiopians have heads like raisins. But it only works as an example if all these things are bad. So merely being an Ethiopian is bad, right? Having a head that looks like a raisin, having skin typical of someone from that area makes you inferior. Being disabled makes you inferior. But even in that ridiculous hyperbole, because that would never actually happen in our society since we value people who look like us, even in that hypothetical example, you should still follow your leader. Yeah. Arabs are the same as all other races, except in the things that actually matter.
You cannot make this up.
So yeah, Muhammad did nothing, and forget my opinion, right? Forget my opinion on the words of Muhammad. All we have to do is look at history. There was, of course, bigotry in the pre-Islamic society, but you know what the effect of Muhammad's words were? It got a lot worse, right? It became very much what we would call modern racism, where merely having dark skin means you are inferior and you are something that is to be enslaved. And thus, why in Arabic to this day, the common term used to describe people with dark skin is slave.
An Arab or a non-Arab, a black or a white, except in piety and good deeds. The Prophet also came with many prophecies of the future, and signs.
Guys, he came with prophets of the future. You know, it's very good because there's 3 futures. If there's just one future, that would not be sufficient proof. But if there's 3 futures, this is proof that Muhammad is a true prophet.
You see, this is the proof. This is the proof.
He said barefoot Bedouin Arabs will compete in building.
I blew it. I should have said, guess what his first prophecy is going to be? And you would have all been right, because this is where you would have all gone. Barefoot Bedouin shepherds competing in constructing the tallest buildings. Ooh, so original. Barefoot Bedouin shepherds he puts in parentheses Arabs, which is funny because that's not remotely what it means. Right? It means these people who normal Arabs view as inferior to themselves. But regardless, barefoot Bedouin shepherds are not competing in constructing the tallest buildings. I'm pretty sure it doesn't say tallest either, right? It really just says tall. He added tall S. He changed tall to tallest and added Arabs. But as I point out every time, according to other authentic hadith, people within 2 generations or 3 generations of Muhammad were saying this had become fulfilled because they'd grown so rich off jihad. They had nothing left to do except build tall buildings. If they aren't barefoot and they aren't Bedouins, the prophecy ain't true. If the prophecy doesn't fit, you must convict Muhammad as a false prophet.
The tallest buildings. They had no money in Arabia at the time. They were desert dwellers. This was.
Oh, always with the desert dwellers. I mean, at least this time it's relevant, right? Because at least this time, that is what Muhammad is actually alluding to, is the poorest, most destitute members of society. At least it's relevant this time, but always with the desert. The desert. How do you explain that the Quran contains contradictions? It was revealed in the desert. How do you explain that the Quran teaches that sex with prepubescent minors is acceptable? It was revealed in the desert. This is miraculous knowledge. How could they have known that minor sex was acceptable?
In building the tallest buildings. They had no money in Arabia at the time. They were desert dwellers. This was a prediction that didn't make too much sense. He could have.
I mean, it actually makes perfect sense, right? His point, and remember, this is supposed to be in the end times. So Muhammad's point is actually that there'll be a complete upheaval of society, such to the point that even the poorest, most destitute members of society will be rich and thus can build tall buildings. It actually makes perfect sense if you think that the end times is this massive chaos where everything's turned upside down. So, what you gonna do with that?
No money in Arabia at the time. They were desert dwellers. This was a prediction that didn't make too much sense. He could have said the Romans, as the Roman Empire was the largest at the time.
Why would he say the Romans will compete with building the tall buildings when they're already building tall buildings? Oh my goodness gracious, what a stupid thing. Muhammad could have made an easy prophecy by saying something that was already true would be true. That wouldn't be a prophecy, genius. Farhan, that is not a prophecy. I prophesize that America will be the richest nation in the world. I prophesize that America will have the greatest military the world has ever known. I could do that. Muhammad could have done that. He could have prophesied that the Arabs would live in the desert. What a stupid thing to say. Oh my goodness gracious. This thing hurts my brain so much.
And this is crazy.
Even all the way up until now, they didn't make and compete in making tall buildings. Until about 50 years ago. Still, it
was only 50 years ago, but also 200 years after the time of Muhammad, or 150 years or whatever after the time of Muhammad, that they thought the prophecy was coming true and the end of the world was coming. Just like has constantly happened throughout Islamic history, because they see prophecies of Muhammad that come true. And thus they think it's the end of the world, even though every single one, if they're actually true, every single one should come true within a very short span of time, because they're all about the end of the world and the imminent signs of it. And that's why Muslims today think that the end of the world is behind us, because they have found some of his hundreds of different sayings about the end times that they can relate to something that's happening now, just like every single other generation of Muslims found things that they could relate to their own time and concluded they were finally living in the end times that Muhammad said would happen within 100 years of his own lifetime. Simpsons TV series is more prophetic than Muhammad. Truer statement. Truer statement.
It was nothing but barren, dry desert. But the Prophet also said the earth will puke its treasures, and then oil came about.
No, mister. You goofed. You put the whole thing up there.
Barren, dry desert. But the Prophet also...
The earth will puke its treasures, and then he tries to move on really quick. What does it actually say? Like gold and silver. The prophecy is, wait for it, that gold and silver will come out of the earth. Has that happened? Has there been massive quantities of gold and silver found in the Islamic world? No. Oh, I've been refuted. Botrius says, to be charitable, oil is called black gold. In English, anyway. That could exist in other languages. It's a possibility. Is Alaska Islamic? Yeah, fun fact. Canada holds the majority of the world's oil reserves. Obviously, Alaska being in the same geographic formation as Canada. Between the United States and Canada, probably hold 50% of the world's oil reserves. It's not all currently accessible, which is why the Gulf states dominate oil production. But there's plenty of oil here in the Americas. But it's puke its treasures like gold and silver. Oh, you meant the Alaska Gold Rush. That's funny. Because Alaska produces a ton of oil, right? But yeah, that's true. Alaska also produces gold. And California, right? California Gold Rush. There's a gold rush in Australia as well. This is where the earth has puked gold. Interesting.
Said the earth will puke its treasures, and then oil came about. The Bedouin barefoot Arabs.
Yeah, and then oil came about. 1966. I don't know when it got out of full screen. I just now realized it's out of full screen. Well, oil came about 1966. Okay. Just like right after the time of Muhammad, right?
Became rich, and they were able to build and compete in building the tallest buildings. There are hundreds of prophecies.
There are hundreds of prophecies of Muhammad, guys. But some reason they always go to tallest building. And they never list any of these other. They'll list one or two other ones, which sometimes vary from one another. But there's hundreds of these. And indeed, there are hundreds of prophecies of Muhammad about the end times. And of those 100, let's say there's 200. I don't know the exact number. But of those 200, let's say probably about 20 have come true. Not at the same time. And thus ultimately became false because the end of the world didn't happen. The world went on after they came true. Like, for example, conquest of Constantinople. Then there's ones that are just blatantly false, like the end of the world will happen within the lifetime of this young boy, or the end of the world will happen within the next 100 years. I'm sorry, not a soul will be living on earth within 100 years. So different. Then there's other prophecies that are unrelated to the end times, which are patently false. There's other prophecies related to the end times that are patently false. There's other prophecies that definitely haven't come true, which I guess technically could still come true. I mean, if you make 200 prophecies, it is a really good, and a lot of them are really vague. There's a really good chance that someone's going to be able to interpret something that comes later as fulfilling that prophecy. I mean, I could sit here right now, I'm not going to, but I could sit here right now and make 200 prophecies about the end times without relying on any knowledge of the Bible. And I bet you that at least 20 of them would come true in the next 1,000 years. Would that make me a good prophet? Or would that make me just a guy making random guesses and getting a few things right?
You can read this book if you want to know more about what the prophet.
Ooh, the forbidden prophecies. I wonder why they're forbidden. No, Strathadius. I wonder why they're forbidden. I mean, they're like told to Muhammad's followers for their own knowledge about the future, or specifically about the end times, generally speaking. So why are they forbidden exactly? Maybe I'll get this book. That could be fun. Oh my goodness gracious. John Wilson says, such a good stream tonight. If you haven't hit that like button, come along and do it. Make sure to commit jihad on the like button, or if you don't want to go that extreme, just discipline it lightly with a toothbrush if you like. That's perfectly acceptable. But either way, make sure you hit that like button. And if you are a Muslim and you don't want to say you like this stream, the K is silent. There is no K in the pronunciation. It's the lie button. Just hit the lie button to say that I'm lying. All good. Dang the mishwak, wow.
Prophesied almost 1,500 years ago that came true. Just as a cherry on top as well, he said, I was born on a Monday, I was given revelation on a Monday, and I will die on a Monday. And you know what day he died on? You can look this up for yourself.
Oh, gee. Muhammad said, I was born on a Monday. Of course, impossible to verify. I received revelation on Monday. Let's assume this is a statement of Muhammad. Assuming he really made this statement. Well, then he probably just projects backwards and forwards from the day that he first got revelation to say that those happened on the same day of the week. And then he eventually dies. And you know what? There's actually disagreement in the Islamic sources about what day he died. There's like 4 different options on exactly when Muhammad died. One of them is indeed a Monday. But it might have been Tuesday or it might even been Wednesday, depending on which narration you read. Now, call me skeptical here, but if Muhammad prophesied that he'd die on a Monday, and he died on a Monday, do you really think there would be variation in the hadith and the narrations? That they might not all be hadith, right? Some of them are seerah literature. But do you really think there'd be variation in the sources if Muhammad prophesied he'd die on a Monday and then died on a Monday? Or do you think it's more likely that there'd be variation if one, Muhammad never made any such prophecy, or two, he made that prophecy but actually died on a Tuesday? And yeah, I don't. There's no reasonable reason to think exactly when he was born. But I mean, that's irrelevant. He Let's say he was born on a Monday. Who cares, right? Knowing that he was born on a Monday is not miraculous knowledge. Right? I don't actually know what day of the week I was born on, but I could look it up if I so cared, and then I could repeat it. And so what? Right? That wouldn't be miraculous knowledge. But predicting the day of your week you die, you got a 1 out of 7 chance of getting it right. So I'm just going to go out on a limb here. Everyone, remember this for when I'm found dead. I will die on a Wednesday. If I die on a Wednesday, make sure to take this video, just clip that part out, and spread it everywhere to prove that I was a true prophet. If I happen to die on a different day of the week, just pretend I never said anything. Because that's how it works with the prophecies of Muhammad, right? Whatever he says or whatever is attributed to him that in some vague way comes true, that's a true prophecy of Muhammad. We'll repeat that everywhere. Everything that's false, we just never mention again.
Now, if all of this makes sense to you,
None of this makes sense to me!
You agree that the Creator created us, we didn't come from nothing. This Creator is not a dog.
Sonic says you can also fudge it based on time zone. That's going to at least get you 2 days, right? This argument about Monday is something I haven't heard much about, actually. Yeah, I haven't actually heard it either. I'm not actually sure what. That's not true. I have heard it. I have heard the saying that I was born on a Monday, received revelation on a Monday, and died on a Monday. I don't know if I've ever heard it in a Dawa context of this being a prophecy of Muhammad, however. Let me offer a third possibility, right? I already offered 2, but let me offer a third. Muhammad actually died on a Monday, and then people just projected back that the day of revelation was a Monday and put it in Muhammad's mouth. Because it's not like anyone knows what day the revelation was. Huh. Wednesday, I'm keeping it out of it. Please do. Clip this part out if I die on a Wednesday. Houston says, I would have expected all this to be happening on Fridays. Well, you might think that. It's actually very interesting. You know, the day of worship occurs on Friday in Islam. So you'd think that a lot of important things happen on Friday. But actually, they tend to be Monday. I don't know if it's maybe it's because Muhammad received revelation on Monday and then everything else was just attributed to Monday as well, because he is actually the real God of Islam. Or maybe, you know, there's other reasons. And maybe that's why he said it was Monday. Maybe there's some sort of superstition around Mondays. I don't know. But actually, typically, important things in Islam tend to fall on Mondays instead of the holy day.
Dog or a cow or a man or a tree. The Creator is nothing
This is just a summary of it. So let me just play the whole thing through again.
Yourself. Now, if all of this makes sense to you, if you agree that the...
Oh, by the way, you know, he only had 10 minutes to prove Islam. He is going to repeat himself for the last 1 minute of that. So actually, really just 9 minutes, right? Just 9 minutes to prove Islam. First minute and a half was... Here's my summary, and then we'll get his summary. First minute and a half was a mediocre but not terrible argument for God. Next minute and a half was an argument against absolute moral truths with the conclusion, but moral truths must exist, therefore you need religion. And then the next minute or so was, but why religion? Well, everything has a purpose, so religion has a purpose too. Then a couple minutes just asserting, about 2 to 3 minutes, just asserting Islamic theology over and over again and saying this is true. Like no attempt whatsoever to argue for it, just a bunch of statements like God sent a bunch of prophets and they all had the same message and that was Islam and blah, 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 blah. Then a little bit on why Muhammad, but again, just stating Islamic beliefs, so maybe that fits in the previous section. Then the turning point about halfway through the video where finally starts to make an actual argument for it, Islam. So from 5 minutes to 9 minutes, I will give him, was an attempt to make an argument for Islam. The rest of the video was either arguing for theism, stating Muslim beliefs, or summarizing the video. So this really should be titled 4 minutes to prove Islam plus 6 minutes of filler. But regardless, for 4 minutes, he actually tried to prove Islam, which was basically the Quran is really beautiful poetry. Everyone says so. Literally every scholar that's ever existed and studied the Quran, whether they're Muslim or not, agrees with this statement. I might have added some hyperbole, but he did say all. All scholars agree with this. Okay. And then, by the way, Muhammad was really illiterate people. Then the Quran contains knowledge Muhammad couldn't have known. And by the way, Muhammad was illiterate. And then Muhammad prophesied some stuff. And at least one thing came true, maybe, kind of, sort of. Therefore, he's the best prophet. And by the way, I'm not going to tell you, but he died on a Monday, which is the ultimate proof that he's a prophet, because everyone who dies on Mondays is a prophet. All right, let's see his own summary now.
The Creator created us. We didn't come from nothing. This Creator is not a dog or a cow or a man or a tree. The Creator is nothing like us. You can accept the reality. Accepting Islam is as easy as wearing a watch and you think the watch is nice. But you now say out loud, yes, I'm wearing a nice watch. You accept and...
Everyone, profound truth. Profound truth. I know I said play through, but I had to stop at this point. I had to. Profound truth. Accepting Islam is just like wearing an expensive watch. It's there whether you admit it or not. Some people will say, I submit, I follow Islam. Other people will just wear Islam, walk around with a nice watch on their hand and not say anything. But some people will be like, look, I got a nice watch. I am superior to you in every way. In your face, loser. My watch is far superior to yours.
Testify to its truth. I testify there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. By the way, Allah just means God in Arabic, like how in Spanish it's Dios, in Hebrew it's Elohim, in Aramaic it's Ilah or Ilaha, and in English it's God or the Creator. I hope this video was of benefit to you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wait. I gave him credit that he would at least summarize the video for a minute, but it was actually only 35 seconds that he summarized it, which was the summary of the summary is God exists. There is a creator. It's not a cow. It is Allah. Allah just means God. Islam is like wearing a nice watch. You got to put it in people's face. If you got it, flaunt it. If you're rich, show it off. And thanks for watching, everyone. He didn't even summarize the video. Like, he didn't summarize any of the arguments. He just said, Islam's a nice watch. I don't know. You know, tough question here. Was this argument stupider than everything else in the video? Is this watch thing as dumb as his other points? Because I mean, I can't get over this watch thing.
You know what? You did your best. Move on.
I guess this is his best. I mean, like I said, this is a high effort video. regardless of the terribleness of the arguments, there was a lot of effort put into creating this video. All the drawings and illustrations and sometimes animations. A lot went into this video. I suspect this probably was his best argument. I mean, it was high effort in terms of, physical work. I would assume that if he's putting in all that physical work, then it's probably also his best thoughts. Okay. I mean, maybe not. Maybe these aren't his best thoughts. I'm sure he could at least justify some of these points a little bit. Yeah, a lot went into the video, except for research. That's the quote of the day to me. A lot went into the video, except for research. And I don't know if timetable use refers to his inability to understand centuries or not, but that was also a fact of the video, that he couldn't figure out what centuries were. Let me just play the last 15 seconds just in case.
خلق السماوات بغير عمد ترونها وألقى في الأرض رواسي أن.
Were they created by nothing, or are they're their own creators? Oh my goodness! Remember earlier where he says you can't be created by nothing, and I say, okay, that's a reasonable point. That's something you should raise. And then he was like, did you create yourself? Of course you didn't. And I was like, why in the world? Why would anyone in the world make such a dumb argument? It didn't occur to me that he was getting it from the Quran. Like, seriously, no one's going to go around and say, I'm my own creator. But Allah feels the need to say, are you dumb? Do you think that you were created from nothing? Are you your own creator? Some people are dumb and go around and say we're created from nothing. But no one is dumb and goes around and says, I created myself. I'm that good. I created myself. And yet, Allah makes it. I thought it was horribly stupid. I thought it was this guy's words. But it turns out Farhan was just quoting the Quran and I missed it. I can't believe I missed it. I can't believe I missed that. And guys, miracle of miracles. For the first time in the history of this channel, Joe Bitta said something intelligent. He said atheists are dumb. I concur. I concur with that. Reminds me of a Boom Boom Room where Muhammad met Stephen Hawking and Muhammad seemed to win the argument. 5 gifted memberships from Jack Ray.
I can't answer this question in a 20-minute interview, nor is it wise to do so, which is why I never brought this topic up myself. You will not find one lecture of mine about this issue. It should never be brought up in public. And I don't like these idiots, and they are idiots, wallahi. This is not something you discuss amongst the masses, ya akhi. It's not wise. I encourage anybody who is really interested to go deep to take the class. I do this class. It'll be 1 year later.
Very true. Yasser Qadhi has never given a lecture. Oh, I didn't have the stats on, man. I didn't have the stats on the whole time. Shame on me. Yasser Qadhi has never given a lecture in which he talked about reasoned answers, channel memberships. So, some rare truth coming from Yasser Qadhi today. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Is that a prophecy? Oh wait, sorry, that was a while ago. Sorry. Cat adjustment observed. That's true. Cat just woke up. Class. Take my class instead. It's cheaper. Yeah, probably. This was hilarious video. I don't know. I have mixed feelings, Snoopy. Like, there's a difference between stupidity and sorry, let me rephrase that. There's a difference between hilarious stupidity and then painful stupidity. And this one was kind of bordering on painful stupidity, in my opinion. Each their own. Each their own. I mean, I did have some laughs. I definitely had some laughs. There's definitely some funny moments, but there's also a lot of just plain bad moments that weren't funny. It was just like, what is wrong with this guy? What? Why does he think that this is a coherent argument? I don't know. Seems like a compilation of Dawa's top 20 lame arguments. I don't know, Nissan Addict. That's kind of generous. Did you see 20 arguments there? I don't think we got that many. Let me try to think. There's the literary beauty of the Quran, for sure. On science, let's see. He said Big Bang expanding universe, which really should be one. I know it's 2 verses, but really should be one. Iron sent down. Then I think he listed 2 prophecies of Muhammad. Am I missing anything? I'm trying to be honest here, but I can't really think of any other argument that was for Islam. Oh, perfect preservation of the Quran. So that's 6 at least. Memorization of the Quran, 7, maybe. I don't know. I don't think there was 20. I could be wrong, but I really don't think there was 20 actual things that could resemble an argument. You see, Thaddeus said 3 hours, and we're right about at 3 hours. This is a miracle, a prophecy. Thaddeus is a true prophet. Oh, yes, Muhammad is illiterate. I missed that very important argument. I mean, he made that one like 4 times, so I don't know if this counts for. All right, one more set of gifted memberships from Jack Ray.
Sir, how can we contribute financially for your organization? They get in touch with me. And very easy, people know where I am. And once they get in touch with me to contribute without causing problem, to contribute in big amounts. And many people call me for lunch and for dinner and for meal, and for every meal they give big amounts, alhamdulillah. So those who really want to contribute, they come and meet me.
Big amounts, big amounts. Jack says it's funny how they count the gifted memberships for the 10x thing, $10 thing to be more precise. But yeah, every gift, well, there was a limit. I think the limit was 100, but I reached the limit of number of gifted number of memberships that they'd give the $10 bonus for, and a large percentage of them were from Jack Ray. There's probably, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 15 that were other people, but I definitely did not get 100 or whatever the exact limit was from other people. Yeah, anyway, this guy was a Nostradamus. Nostradamus. All right. So speaking of Reasoned Answers membership, I'm going to have a members only live stream this weekend. So if you have a gifted membership from Jack Ray, you will be able to attend that. If you don't, and you haven't purchased one of your own, now's the time to purchase, because I'll have a members only live stream sometime this weekend. Depending on some scheduling, some personal life scheduling things, I'm thinking about having a marathon stream on Friday. For those in other parts of the world, in the United States, Thursday is Thanksgiving. Friday, most people also have off work as a holiday, including myself. Sorry, most people with office type jobs. Most people with retail don't have it off. But including myself, I have the day off. It's called Black Friday. Technically, it's called that because it was the day that companies finally sold enough stuff to go from the red to the black. That's why it's actually called Black Friday, because it's it's traditionally the start of the Christmas selling season. But playing off that, I'd say, well, what should we do for Black Friday? Well, something dark and disturbing. Let's watch You think Islamic videos are bad, or you think Dawa videos are bad? Let's watch Islamic shorts or TikToks if you prefer. So here's my proposal for what I'm going to do. Now, again, pending scheduling allowances, but I'm going to start by doing a search, proof of Islam, whatever, some sort of search, just to get the feed started, and then I'm going to be required to watch every Islamic short that comes up and skip everyone that's not Islamic until I find a coherent argument. And thus, it may take many hours, or I pass out of exhaustion or give up. one of those things happens. So what I'm thinking is it'll be a very, very long stream and painful stream, right? A very Black Friday, a very painful Black Friday for me. Be tortured. But it would be the same idea as me going through these videos, right? I would make fun of stuff, basically. And a lot of them aren't going to end up being dawa, right? I just said any Islamic video, so a lot of them won't be arguments for Islam per se. They'll be like that one hilarious one where I played, where it was like made killing lizards into a video game. Or like the people washing the they have the best job in the world, the people who get to wash the floors at Mecca. Stuff like that. So, and there'll be lots of inspirational speeches from Mufti Menk, and all kinds of things will be mixed in. But point is, if it's Islamic, I have to watch it. Ultimately, it would be mostly about making fun of stuff. But the idea is I torture myself until I give up. Sounds like fun, I think. You'll have a severe headache doing that. I thought Muhammad was born on Black Friday, hence the name. Oh, Jack won't be off on Friday. That's a shame. Definitely a shame. Anyway, look for an announcement on that. Schedule allowing, that's my plan for Friday. If things don't work out, then I might just do a shorter stream on Friday, or might not stream on Friday. But I definitely plan to do a members only stream, most likely on Saturday, Bible study on Saturday, possibly stream with my wife on Sunday. So look for a stream filled weekend. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out my new shorts channel, where I take what I think might be funny moments from these streams and make them into shorts, mixing in some fun little editing and whatnot, called proof texted, because they're texts, or in this case videos, taken out of context, don't really make a lot of sense sometimes by themselves. Like, one of them is like me saying, "This is the best argument. I got to convert to Islam right now." Stuff like that. Others are a little longer and actually have some context. Check it out. Pinned link for my latest short there. Until we meet again, have a great day. Have a great holiday weekend for those in the United States, and have a great normal weekend for everyone else. Till we meet again, we close with the beautiful words of Pastor Jake.
Pray this ceaselessly. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me.